Commission, February 14th, 2024. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Thank you, dear.
And sad Ash Wednesday, everyone. You get both. All right. We'll start with roll call.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take roll call. Chair Grumbine.
Present.
Vice Chair House.
I'm here.
Commissioner Butler.
Here.
Commissioner Dordan.
Here.
Commissioner Jury is absent. Commissioner Ensberg.
Here.
Commissioner Lindvik.
Yeah. Present.
Commissioner McClure.
Here.
Commissioner Uli.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's go on to item A, public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for public discussion. All right.
Great. Thank you, Chair Grumbine. At this time, I don't have any speaker slips, but if you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. I'm not seeing any movement. We also do not have any virtual participants at this time, and we didn't receive any general written correspondence, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Grumbine.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, we are on to item B, approval of the minutes of Historic Landmarks Commission meeting January 31st, 2024.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Uli, second by Vice Chair House. Under discussion, any edits, changes? Commissioner Hansberg?
Rise to the
I guess
occasion.
somebody has to do it right. I wanted to just clarify under the committee reports, just to clarify that I am not a member representing HLC. I was just giving the announcement about the meeting that was coming up for the Objective Design Development Standards. So I just wanted that to be clear. And also, it originally started as Objective Development Standards, and then it evolved into, and now it is called Objective Design Development Standards, odds. So, in case that anybody.
odd.
I know. So that was one thing. And then on item 2, number 7. If I could just suggest that we say, in this instance, and possibly because of the many trees and the foliage that would make visibility of the story poles difficult, we chose to waive.
So I think that there were multiple reasons that different, I think that was one of the reasons that stated, I think I might have been the one stating it. I think there were some different reasons that different commissioners felt they were okay with it. So, but I do think that in this instance, it is a proper add to that, because that was part of our language as we were discussing it.
Yes. Okay, that's fine. And then item 4, number 2, and however you think is best to do this. This was about the, number 2, let's see, where is it? The cornice. Okay, if not painted to match adjacent. I think they're repainting the building, so it's not existing, to be very picky. And that without a cornice is acceptable. And I don't know if you want, if it's appropriate or necessary to add, it was because of the material of that wall wouldn't accept a cornice. They didn't think, they were kind of researching that. But just to keep it simple, we decided it was okay to leave it without the cornice.
So
Maybe
what
that's
was your-
So,
was your
paint to
suggestion,
match,
Andy?
paint to match adjacent walls. And without the cornice is acceptable, as it will be less obvious. I think it was more, we came to the conclusion that just leaving it off was okay because it was basically impossible to do, number one. And number two, that just keeping it simple would make it less, bring less attention to it.
I would suggest we just eliminate that sentence because they weren't proposing a cornice, so why get into details?
Okay, perfect.
That might be true, but I think we may have had it in our previous note. I
Something
could be
about-
wrong, but I think we might have had in our previous note to put a cornice on it.
We could say the commission accepts not having a cornice on.
Yeah, okay, something like that. Let's
Okay.
change it to, the commission accepts not having a cornice,
Okay,
as it draws less attention to it.
okay. And then number 3 was just a typo. Item number 3, or is it number 3? No, it's number 3. It's reflected ceiling plan, not reflective.
Or it could blind you, it could be reflective.
Yeah. Mirrored.
Anyway,
Mirrors, print it on a piece of mirror, yeah.
so
Okay,
that
that's
was, that was
good
all,
catch.
that was all, and
Okay.
thank you, and as always, thank you for doing the minutes. It's always challenging. Thank you for doing such a good
Great.
job.
All right, so do the maker and the seconder of the motion accept those revisions?
Oh, I suppose.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion? Oh, yeah, sorry, any other edits or comments? All right, let's have a roll call vote to accept the minutes.
Thank you,
Those
Chair
changes.
Grumbine. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Dordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes,
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Chair Grumbine.
Aye,
Motion passes.
all right, great.
Who's
On-
not here?
On to,
Or Drury.
the person that sits to your right.
Remember him?
On to item C, approval of the consent calendar for February 14th, 2024.
Motion to approve the calendar.
All right, thank you. To staff?
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. Item A was 1514 Garden Street, which received review after final with the comment that the plans demonstrate substantial conformance to the plans that received project design approval. Item 2 was 32 and 36 West Carrillo Street, and staff has a brief announcement as I go into this one. The project was received project design approval at consent and was continued to full commission for final approval, but was scheduled at consent due to a staff error. So I requested that the consent reviewers entertain granting final approval. Just wanted to make you all aware of that as you're voting on approving the consent calendar, but the project received final approval with conditions. All pole-mounted lighting lanterns and wall packs shall be a maximum of 3,500 K color temperature. 2, the security cameras shall be a dark color similar to the poles they are mounted on. 3, the planter on Chapala Street shall have a perforated pipe and gravel in the bottom of the planter area to drain air. Some typos there. Drain to the north end. 4, the stucco shall be painted a city-approved off-white color. And 5, restudy the plant list for plants that are hardy and low maintenance. And then item C was 1911 State Street, number C, which received final approval with the condition that the exterior light fixtures be a maximum of 33,000 K color temperature.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
Yes, Vice Chair House.
So just a few comments on that item B, 32 and 36 West Carrillo Street. I looked at it carefully to see if there was anything I thought should come to the full board because it was different than what we had seen before, but it seemed to be in conformance to the PDA we gave it before. I asked for the stucco paint because they were just going to have a color coat, and I thought that's going to get vandalized, and then they'll be trying to paint over it, and that'll get worse and worse. The planter in the detail they had just had a big footing under it for the wall adjacent to it and no indication of how it drained, but he explained that. And yeah, those are the big things. You know, in the past, we saw something with the columns at one end of the parking stalls with big cantilever beams, and so I checked to see that that was not the case. And there's a 12-foot high enclosure around one of the equipment yards, which was at the back of the property. But apparently that was the same as what we saw before, so it seemed acceptable to give it a final.
Okay. Any discussion around that or any other items? All right, let's have a roll call vote for it.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Dordan,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Great. All right, now we'll go to item D, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals.
Mr. Chair, I have
Yes,
an
Vice Chair.
announcement if staff doesn't have any.
No announcements from staff
Okay.
at this time.
It is with a sad heart that I share with you that Don Sharp, longtime member of the city ABR and HLC, passed away this last weekend at his second home in Colorado. And is surrounded by family, and there will be a memorial eventually. We're not sure when yet, so we're organizing that. So just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you for letting us know. All right. Any other announcements, et cetera? Okay. All right. We'll go on to item E, subcommittee reports. All right. Yes, Commissioner Jordan?
I am the HLC representative on the City Task Force for Objective Design Development Standards, and that we met last Friday. This is the project that the city has commissioned Opticus as a consultant for. This is the first time we had met in a while. We will meet again soon. Because there's been a long time since it came before this commission, I requested a staff briefing at some point for HLC, simply to bring us up to speed on what's going on. And I'll have more to say at that time. But we met last Friday. I requested a staff briefing to the HLC.
All right. Thank you. Other subcommittee reports? All right. We'll close item E. And it looks like we have those for item 1 here, so we can get started a little bit early here, a couple minutes early. This is great. So this is a discussion item. Item 1 is Community Environmental Council report. And the Community Environmental Council will present a report to the commission titled An Ecological Framework for Revitalizing the Santa Barbara City Core. So welcome. Come on up. Yeah. And you can turn your mics on here and introduce yourselves for the record. And if you want, why don't we share this mic and we can give them that mic?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
All right.
Make sure that little green light is on them.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, perfect. All right, so if you would introduce yourselves for the record, and you'll have up to 15 minutes to give us your presentation, and then we can have a little discussion.
Will be very brief. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Carl Hatterer. I'm here to represent the Community Environmental Council, and with me are two other people representing CEC. Dennis Allen, the well-known builder who brought green building to Santa Barbara and did so much to promote it, and Dr. Steve Windhager, the director of our wonderful botanic garden. So I will be very brief. First of all, thank you for giving us this opportunity to have a conversation with you about the ecological principles for revitalizing State Street that CZ has developed and is proposing. These principles build on over 50 years of accomplishments by CEC to find and implement solutions for urgent environmental issues in our community. The framework itself is intended to provide a high-level set of principles to guide strategies and actions for revitalizing State Street and indeed the whole downtown core of our city. The principles are designed to ensure a healthy environment for a thriving community, and without a healthy environment, no community can thrive. We know that at this point. And to do this for generations to come. The principles are designed, the principles assume a special importance at this time of the rapidly advancing existential threat of climate change. There is climate change. If we don't get that right, the future is in really great doubt. The challenge of climate change is our gravest test as a community and as a species. Even though HLC has a very specific and narrowly circumscribed purview, we hope that the commissioners will consider the challenge of climate change and the principles that we have derived from that in everything, in every decision you make, because it's going to be of vital importance for the future. The principles are laid out in 5 sections, but it's completely clear that everything that's said in the principles is interactive with everything else. They're all interwoven, they're all connected together. In the environment and in climate, there is no such thing as a single solution for a single problem. It's all interconnected. Since you have the full document, I will not go through the document itself, but really save time for you to ask questions and provide input to us. And Steve and Dennis will be here for you to respond. So thank you for giving us this opportunity, and with this is all I want to say. I will make it very short and sweet.
Great.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so if that concludes your presentation, we'll get to questions and that after, but we'll go to public comment first. Any member of the public wishing to, in the room, wishing to speak on this item? Okay, not seeing anyone.
Great. Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. I'm not seeing any hands raised, and we also did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Grumbine.
All right, so to the commissioners for questions, and considering this is, and first I'll thank Commissioner Ensberg for helping bring this to us to be able to actually talk about it and agendize and have some discussion about ideas, which is always great. So we can have this, most items are presentation, questions, and then comments, and not a dialogue really. But I think this is the type of item that's great in dialogue, and so we can kind of question and also dialogue as part of the discussion. So, all right. So does any?
I have a
Yes,
question.
Commissioner McBride.
Would the CEC's wishes ever be incorporated into the El Pueblo Viejo guidelines? Like, could that, I mean, I know those are aesthetic and these are more functional, like permeable paving and but do you think there'd ever be a part in the guidelines that talks about those being goals?
That's a good question. My thoughts on it, in particular, just personally, I think that, and having met with at least two of you previously at the beginning of the year, and getting to talk through it more, and also reading your documents and that, it seems like very much within the whole sustainable conversation, there's the overlap with the EPV and guidelines and design. And there's a whole heck of I believe there can be 100% agreement where there can be all of the things that are within EPV could also be thought in a sustainable way. Not necessarily, so for example, pavers is a great example. There are certain pavers that are EPV appropriate and are design aesthetic appropriate, and there are certain pavers that aren't. So part of it is, what are the sustainable things that work within our system, or our design aesthetic and that system? Is finding the commonalities and things that check off both boxes, really. So it doesn't seem like, so for example, solar is another, well, the state is kind of taking care of that, yeah. But as an example, solar, I don't think anyone at this table is against solar panels, everyone's for them, but we're for them and not seeing them. Sort of like plumbing, like we want it to exist, but we don't want it to be exposed.
This is terracotta.
Yes, exactly, unless it's a good clay pipe. So that's kind of where I think that there can be, where you find the things that check off both boxes and work both ways, yeah.
If I may make a comment
Yeah.
to that, and this is, first of all, this was a really terrific question, I thought. The principles are very high level, and they really concern something that is beyond our control, right? This is a framework within which we need to work, whether we like it or not. It's just simply a fact. So integrating this into the EPV guidelines and so forth would make a great deal of sense. In many cases, when you consider design choices, there are choices. It's not a single option that you have choices. And hopefully some of the choices will be sustainable, others may not be. And the sustainable choice needs to be chosen. In fact, the principles are important that as we discuss them with various people on the city council and others on city staff, it has variously been suggested that these principles should actually ought to be made, integrated into or made the basis of a new general plan for the city. And I think that would make a great deal of sense as well, given the issue we're dealing with here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But as the city council warned us, that's a 10-year project and millions of dollars. So
Yes.
they're talking about at least incorporating a number of these pieces much sooner than that.
Yeah. And in some ways, it gives us the opportunity to have the downtown core be a pilot project for to identify those areas where maybe there are some potential conflicts with historic preservation that we hadn't considered yet. We do think that there are ways to harmonize both because there are choices in how you approach these things. But if there are some conflicts where they come to, this is what we need to work out before that becomes part of a general plan, so that we can figure out ways to make sure that we achieve all of our goals. In most cases, the biggest conflict to achieving all those goals is just not making them explicit. by adopting these sort of principles, we hope to make the goals explicit. And by communicating that out to the design community, if they know that you're looking for these things, they're going to be bringing you projects that comply with these, with this framework.
Yeah, Commissioner Ansbach.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. Can we just go
Yeah.
into comments? I mean, do I have to?
Yeah, no, this it's a dialogue and comment away.
Well, I would say, I want to add that I appreciated the interactive and interconnected words that you said, which is absolutely true. It's all together, all of it. And I think that what we do as HLC and preservation of the downtown is very much in line with that, because what we do, one of the best ways to be sustainable is to adaptive reuse, not throwing things away, working with your existing, we have this great downtown core. One of the things that has happened over the last, 50, 60, 70 years was urban sprawl. So one of the pieces we don't have in our classic downtown is housing. So it looks like a European town with housing up there, but there isn't any. So if we could add the housing in, I think that's what we really need to do to make it a true downtown. So where you have, rural areas outside that are preserved, and you have a true core of vibrancy for residential, commercial, the things that downtowns are. So I think that we already are doing a lot of that just by virtue of our responsibility to protect and preserve the historic downtown, which is so beautifully designed in a classic way. We just need to get the housing in there and use adaptive reuse as a way of preserving those great old buildings, which many of them are already incredible materials that last forever. So these are tried and true buildings and design. So that's all I wanted to, and I would really I appreciate, I think, what Commissioner I agree with that is, and that's what we've been talking about for a while, that we really need to have, and what Chair Grumbine said too, we want to have all of this stuff, and just like the plumbing, we don't want to see it. We want it to all come together in a way that's proper and beautiful, but that includes all those sustainable pieces. So yes, so we really appreciate you being here today, and encourage other disciplines, shall we say, that we need to talk about all of it. Transportation, all of it ties together into a whole. So we appreciate it, and recognition of the importance that HLC has in this role. So if there's any, mention specifically of Historic Landmarks Commission and El Pueblo Viejo, I think that's a powerful, important statement.
Commissioner
I'll
Doran?
stop there.
I admired the document, and I read it as a vision document that spells out principles. And it prompts a series of questions that deal with next steps, moving from vision to action. And I have a couple. And one is quite a large one, but given sea level rise and what we are projecting, is downtown where Santa Barbara ought to be becoming more dense? Or would, for example, outer State Street be a better area to be building lots of new housing? And that's about how you are environmentally aligned between the building and what the environment's telling you. And that's one of my questions. I'm just curious how you feel about that. Is downtown where we really ought to be densifying?
Generally speaking, I think increasing center urban density is an important principle in our environmental future. Obviously, this has to happen within a framework that makes it possible, and makes it reasonable, and makes it appropriate. We also, as you know from the framework, we also feel very strongly about having more greenery in the mix, opening up corridors that allow cooling breezes from the sea to come up through the city and allow for natural cooling, cutting down on the amount of air conditioning we will need increasingly in coming years, in coming decades. So those are things that need to be weighed into balance as well. But in general, increasing urban density is an incredibly important principle of urban planning from an environmental perspective, because that is what avoids sprawl. And that is what avoids unnecessary transportation, unnecessary inappropriate land use, and so on.
And if I could just comment to very explicitly to, should we be focusing folks on coda and below or coda and above? I would say probably coda and above. But literally, there's so much of downtown that is still predicted to be well above even future potential sea level rise and storming events, that we don't have to move to Upper State Street in order to accommodate the future.
Yeah.
Another question about solar and rooftop solar. And again, this is about next steps and so forth. But has anyone calculated the total square footage of rooftops in the EPV? And how much of that total could be equipped with solar panels? And then what percentage of the energy needs would that generate? And the question leads to, you're trying to find that sweet spot between microgrids, district-wide grids, and regional grids. But do we even, to your knowledge, do we even have that number, what the square footage of rooftop Santa Barbara is?
I think the Business Academy has looked at it and put some rough numbers together, but I don't think it's been a scientific study.
Okay. And my last comment deals with downtown amenities, because the report advocates for a list of amenities, including children's playgrounds. But the majority of projects that have come before us that include housing, the majority of those housing units are studios or one-bedrooms. And that seems to be aimed at either a young adult or an empty nester market. It doesn't seem to me that the projects that we're seeing downtown are family-oriented housing. And to me, that becomes an issue when we start to talk about what kind of amenities do we have downtown.
I think you're correct on the kind of housing that we've been seeing and that's being planned. But we want to encourage the full diversity of housing, which would include young families and maybe teenager families, teenagers in parts of families. But and I think it's really important to have that mix of people along our downtown corridor. And so one of the things we hope that the principals will do will help diversify the kind of housing that we're seeing.
Okay. I raise that issue because, of course, the state is driving a lot of stuff. And my comment is, it seems that all the state cares about are numbers. And yet, those housing units, there's a demographic quality to them. And reports like what you guys can keep reminding the city, the community, that there's a demographic quality to those numbers. They're not just numbers.
And Commissioner Gordon, what you're really articulating here is the interconnectedness of things,
Yes.
right? And I think that's very much to the point. But ultimately, what we need is a really good mix that works on every level, right?
And I'd also stress that, again, to have an urban, vibrant downtown, even if you don't live in downtown, if you have a young family, you want to be able to bring that entire young family downtown and not have it be a horrible experience for the little ones. So the more we can incorporate those features into a downtown environment, whether you live there or visit that space, it makes that downtown core more vibrant.
Like splash pads, right?
I'm not going to go there.
One of the things we're already seeing, I'm sure you're probably aware of this, the courthouse is a great convening thing for young mothers with their babies or toddlers or young children. And that needs to be expanded upon. But it happens in some pockets where it's convenient and attractive for those kinds of people.
My last comment is, you mentioned a couple of times in the document about capacity building, and I really think that's important at a variety of levels, and the CEC can play a critical role in building capacity to understand these issues and to plan transition steps.
CEC has a history of studying things well ahead of time. As you might remember, that CEC developed an energy plan for Santa Barbara County with the goal of being fossil-free by 33 in, what was it, 2005 or something like this?
2005, 2006,
Right.
yeah.
And so that was a visionary document, way ahead of the time. And it turns out that when that plan was proposed, a lot of people said that's crazy, that it's not doable, it will not happen. We are there. We are just about there.
Any
Ahead
other
of time.
Commissioner LaCour, and then I'll
Yeah, I just
tie it
thought
up here.
that is a really interesting point. Does anyone know does the state, we always hear about you need to add X number of units, but that really does make everything become a studio, doesn't it? Because, so would it make sense to lobby for square footages compared to units in terms of being the measurable increment?
If you want to, go for it.
Maybe that's something the CEC could lobby Sacramento to incorporate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point in terms of the mix, and I think the state is one size fits all for a lot of their thinking of trying to get housing, period, including what we're wrestling with, which is places like Santa Barbara where we have a very good aesthetic. It's also difficult with some of the overrule that they're doing in terms of our design standards or other things. Commissioner Uli, and then I'm going to try to do a quick little wrap-up now because we're over time, but.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very important topic, I believe. But I just have to make the observation that it can become very frustrating as to how you get this into our systems. There are a lot of, if you did a Venn diagram, I guess, there's a lot going on. There's a master plan, and there's this, and there's that, and the other thing, and they're all overlapping. They all have some kind of influence over it. And so, where does that leave us? Well, we have control over our design guidelines, and I would encourage the HLC to review our guidelines and find out how these principles can be filtered into that document, because we control that document. We don't control the general plan or the state street man, nothing else. So we ought to do our part. Otherwise, it gets very frustrating because nothing happens.
I should also add that we have been encouraged to talk to the various city commissions and boards. And HLC is the first time we're doing this with. We will also hopefully talk to the Planning Commission, the Architectural Board of Review, and so forth. So to help in the communication between all those bodies that have control of projects being designed and permitted eventually.
Yeah, so a little bit along that line, and maybe just to sort of wrap it up for this conversation, for this round. One of the ways that's interesting that I think that when you think of the California Building Code as an architect and what, the boxes that it checks off, a lot of them are oftentimes very short-sighted, in my opinion. And, if you run the life of the material, the life of the thing, it is cheap and it gets thrown away in 20 years or 30 years, and the buildings don't last very long at all. A lot of the things that are good and we love about Santa Barbara has been sort of the long things like, us not requiring copper gutters, but actually encouraging, because that's a 100-year, gutter as opposed to something that's going to be trash in 20 years. And so, and same with, thick walls and things like that are naturally more insulated, and wall-to-window ratios that are part of our, design guidelines that are naturally sustainable in the long run, right? And so thinking about things in a long-term way, I think, is a really great thing that we might be able to add to the conversation that California currently doesn't have in the conversation. It's very short-sighted and short-term in terms of how we build. And I think that in the objective design standards, one of the interesting things, as I was part of the earlier stages with Commissioner Lenvik as well, was looking at, we were trying to come up with these things that would go across all of the city, so we just basically went Spanish. And if it worked here, it worked in ABR as well, and things like that. If we are thinking about materials that work well here and could work elsewhere as well, that could kind of become a bit of a good standard. But for thinking long-term about things as well, not just the short-term thing that checks off the sustainable California box, but actually the long-term, like clay tile roofs, 100-plus years, right? If you start thinking about things and and the other aspect is beautiful, right? So the Santa Barbara beautiful, the things that we really care about are things that in 100 years are still going to be beautiful and people are still going to care about them, so they're not going to be tearing them out as much. So anyways, I think that's an interesting part of the conversation
Yeah.
that this commission can be involved with as you think of the long-term future, so.
As we close, just one of the things is you are all thought leaders in this community and have great experience. And one of the things we're hoping is that we can work together to kind of move these things forward. And, you know, we realize you have restrictions on your jurisdiction as members of the commission, but you're also important citizens in this community. And that's, so any suggestions you can make to us to help this process, we would love to hear.
Great.
We maybe don't have time today,
Commissioner
but
Lendick, and then we'll wrap up for today, but yeah, this is a great beginning of the conversation.
This document is visionary and very idealistic, and my concern is that we don't have items in here which we can say, this is what we're going to accomplish in the next 5 years. I mean, this, one of your, the 15-minute city, well, that doesn't work where I live. It doesn't work where majority of the people live in this town. There's no bus service, there are hills, you can't ride bikes on them, so on and so forth. So it doesn't really work with the downtown that we're dealing with now, except within the 50-minute radius, which is a very small part of the city. And it says the plan should seek and encourage a diverse and intentional mix of businesses, organizations, and resources. Well, we have no control over what businesses go into Santa Barbara. And State Street being revitalized isn't going to work if we don't have businesses, but it's out of our control, it's out of our hands. The state has taken over a lot of what is happening in the city. They're saying you don't need to provide parking, for residential units. And that's, I think, a very idealistic view of things, because we're going to have units with service workers in them who've got cars. They got no place to park them, except in the adjoining neighborhood, driving out people who live in the adjoining neighborhood who are now parking on the street. So, we've got to find some real solid objectives that we can say we're going to accomplish this, and I don't see solid short-term objectives in here, other than that which is being driven by the state and federal government.
Yeah, and I think, just to sort of tie a bow on it with that, is I think this is the visionary document, right? So then how does that combine with groups like ours, like our commission, and come up with more goal-oriented strategy, and, having something. Specificity, exactly.
Huge amount of work to be done yet.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning. But we are truly grateful and very encouraged by the interest HLC is taking in this and your support. So thank you very much. We really
Thank you guys
for your time today. Thank you
and
very
all
much.
the work you're doing.
Thank
All
you.
right, good luck. Yeah. All right. Okay, we are on now to item 2. And let's just check. Okay, so,
Right there.
all right, so we're on to item 2. This is discussion on State Street master plan process. This is to facilitate a discussion by the HLC on topics under the HLC's purview related to the State Street master plan. The commission's comments will be submitted to the State Street Advisory Committee for consideration. And so on this item, I wanted to first say that Tess Harris was unfortunately not able to make it here. She's not feeling well, but she's going to be watching it and adding to the notes. So hi, Tess. And so this is part, for those of you who don't know, this is part 2 of our discussion, which we had last 2 weeks ago, last meeting. And so we weren't able to finish in time. It was an ambitious attempt, but we got into the discussion as well. And so now we're going to return to it. We have technically this agendized for the next item is 2:40, but we're running 15 minutes late. We'll see how things go and what we can come to agreement on. But I'm unfortunately I'm working off my computer here. We'll have notes we'll be able to pull up as well, but I had printed off a copy and marked it up and then forgot it, so. So I have some of the notes highlighted here so I'll just refer to it, but then call it up on the screen. So I think we could probably, so from last time, the overview of the goals was to have the discussion, especially things within our purview, and this is this, but recognizing the State Street Advisory Committee is the body that is the official review body for the master plan. It will be coming to us for additional comments, but part of our goals are to give Commissioner Lenvik comments and feedback. We talked about the MIG proposal from October, November, and we pulled that up for some discussion and some commentary as well. And so that was kind of our general framework and what we're going to try to come to. We're going to also see what we can come to agreement on, and probably especially principles, and we can talk about particulars as well, but I think we want to try to give things as well summarized, general directions to Commissioner Lenvik and general thoughts to the State Street Advisory Commission and to City Council if we have them and if we come to a good consensus on it. So with that, I think we'll go to public comment now, because we've gone over it from before, and then so to give us sort of the maximum amount of time for discussion, we'll go to public comment and then come back to the commission.
Right. Thank you, Chair Grumbine. At this time, I don't have any speaker slips for this item, but if you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. I'm not seeing any movement, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I'm not seeing any hands raised, but we did receive one letter from Kevin Boss that was distributed to the commission prior to the meeting. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Chair Grumbine.
Okay, great. All right, so to sort of come back to our conversation and discussion, it was previously, part of the way it was structured, I had tried to set it up so that we can have straw votes on things and give sort of, some sort of specificity. It also came to light in our discussion and in thinking about it more afterwards as well, that getting into the nitty-gritty, while it might be specific and helpful, we can probably discuss the nitty-gritty and then zoom out to a general principle or a general sort of direction or comment. And I think that there were also notes circulated, the notes from Commissioner Ensberg as well as Commissioner Jordan, and maybe one more, that were circulated with everyone. And what I was hoping as well was for some discussion on some of their main points and seeing if we have agreement, if we can sort of adopt by, or agree by reference to some of their statements so that we don't have to go into depth or on an individual basis vote on Adirondack chairs or not Adirondack chairs for all the different items. So that was kind of my initial thoughts on it. I don't know what you all think of that kind of general approach of kind of hitting some of the main points from the various comments, seeing if we can generalize that as an idea and a thought to be forwarded forward.
I like it. Let's dive in.
Yes. All right. Okay. All right. So if everyone's good with that, I have Commissioner Jordan.
For everybody, I guess.
I didn't see anyone say no. Two yeses and no nos.
Yeah, I know.
So speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. So all right. So Commissioner Jordan's. Let's go through his comments first. And I think some of the sort of the general highlights that I was trying to bring out and see if I can summarize, or not summarize, but just read back the key summary things was, so one of the points he made with State Street is first and foremost a street, and then he went on to say that those features that establish and maintain that identify of State Street as the main street of Santa Barbara and reinforce the distinctive urban architectural and landscape character of Santa Barbara, a character of those who live here, love, and tourists come great distances to experience. So I think that general principle of State Street as a street, and not just any street, but as the core street of Santa Barbara, and part of what gives it its draw is sort of is that sort of a basic principle. And thoughts on that? All right. Strong yes. Okay, good. Okay, so that's sort of one.
I like it.
Yeah, if you didn't, that would be a problem. I know we have at least one yes for all these next items.
It's a no for you.
Yeah. Okay, so,
Chair Grumbine?
yes.
Can I just to thank Commissioner Dordan, because I think, that really, he hit the nail on the head, and I think that is, in my view anyway, I completely agree with that. I appreciate that he put it so succinctly, and I think that's the big thing. That is the big thing. To me.
Yep. Okay. So, and then his next comment was that, or one of his next comments on it was that the HLC is charged with ensuring that development is compatible with the EPV. And it's interesting because as a review body with both as a landmark district, it's both a historic preservation district, but it's also a design district. And I think that's very, very key to keep both of those things in mind as the designs go forward. So, and that I think it summarized well with saying that ensuring that development is compatible with the EPV, because some of it is by preservation, some of it is by adaptive reuse, some of it's by just designing within the EPV guidelines. Commissioner Uli?
I would agree with that, unless and except the master plan regulates our guidelines out of enforcement, because somebody else is deciding for us instead of us.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because I think that part of a part of this stage is us giving commentary to give guidance for those who now have who are going to be judging this thing that's the master plan. And so maybe to turn that into guidance would be that the master plan respect the urban character of the EPB, or so that basically keep it in sync with it. As don't do what you just said. In other words, don't at a master plan level propose something that is against the core of our EPV guidelines.
Or invalidate the guidelines through that legislative document.
Yeah. Okay. Is that seemingly that sort of general, compatibility with the EPV guidelines and consistency with it, and at the master plan level as well, would be the sort of the thought to promote.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's consistent with what you were saying.
Okay, next, so next was a question about public space. Yes, yep, working through his right now. So, and I think some of it's going to overlap with some of the things that you submitted as well, Commissioner Ensberg. So you had some questions about whether there is enough public space or not, and what the types of that public spaces are. And it seemed like that part of what you were getting at was the fact of just having more public space for the sake of more public space isn't necessarily a good thing. It could actually be a negative in a certain sense. It could pull from other public spaces or other experiences, or it could be redundant and not used because it's redundant or things like that. But more that the public space should be a planned, intentional thing if you're going to do it. Is that a fair?
Yes.
Okay. So then you went on to say, I'm against accommodations that undermine the urban identity of State Street as one thing, our main street. Trying to change the urban DNA of a city is a recipe for failure. Work with the existing urban and architectural DNA of Santa Barbara, not against it. So I think that sort of last part, I think you may have not have read it, but it was in the text, is also seemingly sort of a good summary, is working with our DNA, our urban DNA, as opposed to against it, which is, I think, partly what we can see in the previous renderings as well in terms of the design for it seemed to not be working with Santa Barbara's DNA. So, work with the DNA?
So right.
Okay. Yeah.
Is it okay to?
Yeah, jump in, yeah.
also recognizing that, here it is, our DNA. Also recognizing that, the way that the city was put together and sort of in the big picture of things, we all know, if you're downtown, it is basically about a 5 to 7 minute walk to the beach. Biggest playground ever. So you want to go play, have a splash pad? Well, walk right down there and you can go right to the beach.
There's an ocean.
Right? And we also have, all these the courthouse, huge lawn, kids are already playing there all the time. We have Alice Keck Park, we have all these spaces with grass, except De La Guerra Plaza at the moment. But I didn't want to ask that question because, but anyway, I'm just saying that, that is, when you zoom out and you look at all these other places that already feed in and provide that, then do we really, does the way the city was originally set up, as Commissioner Dordan points out, need to be converted into something else completely? Something like that.
Yeah, so that seems to tie with that, with the line of questioning as well, because if you were to propose a portion of, just making up an example, a whole block of State Street to be a giant green lawn right next to the adjacent block of the courthouse, which has a giant green lawn, that seems both redundant and, and also, bad for a number of different reasons. But one of them is because that area doesn't need that thing there, right?
Already has it.
So it already has it. So part of all the holistic design and is tied to the DNA, but it seems like it's more about also just being aware of what's all your adjacencies of public space, and how does this fit within those adjacencies, because so that it doesn't take away or add. Or add something that's useless,
Right.
or because it's redundant.
So we do micro and macro.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so everyone good with those? Okay. And then the next comment was that on the design guidelines, so that, and his end sentences, I think, summarize best. All these pieces of urban furniture, all the elements of the streetscape that are solid and fixed in place, I expect will have to come before HLC for approval. No exceptions, or no exemptions, no special deals. There are clearly articulated design guidelines for the EPV, and they need to be respected. And I think that sort of that general comment kind of summarizes a lot of the particulars. It solves for the question for a lot of the particulars of what we were seeing that were incompatible with what even the specifics of the design guidelines already outline. So it's sort of step one is just having for all the pieces is they need to be, EPV appropriate. And that seems to summarize on a higher level than needing to get into all the, needing to get into the Adirondack chairs.
I think one of the items that I think should be addressed, I may have to address it with the advisory committee, is the street furniture. And I don't know that today, if we as a Landmarks Advisory Committee saw concrete benches and concrete walls and concrete planters and such, I don't know that we would say, yeah, that represents our Mediterranean history or part of the vocabulary of Mediterranean. I don't think it is, and I think we should be strong in advocating at the advisory committee and with MIG or other designers that we've got to be careful that we don't accept what has been previously put there as being appropriate to the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, I hope we're in agreement on that. I would hate to
Like
get
an
up.
example, like you mean some of the raised planters?
Yeah, I mean,
that are there now?
Yeah, we would not, they're concrete, we would not do
Yeah.
that. I think there are better ways for us to provide planters for plants, or there are better ways to provide benches. And they may not be as durable, and the Public Works Department may not like the fact that we want to have wood benches or metal benches or whatever that are more appropriate to the era of the 1920s and 30s. they want to have things that are, indestructible and they don't have to do much maintenance on. But I think we want to have things that are appropriate to the Mediterranean feel of downtown and that can change over time. I mean, if we find that all of a sudden the 1000 block of State Street is getting very vibrant and needs to have more places for people to sit, then we want to be able to go in and do that and not have to pour concrete because the 1000 block of State Street may not be vibrant in 5 years. That may move up or down, and we want to be able to accommodate that move in the future. So I think the permanence of poured concrete or even sandstone is questionable in my mind as furniture.
Okay, so trying to see how that could be sort of a summarized concept. So it seems like there's a couple things. One thing is you're saying is I think the starting point is it has to be EPV appropriate, right?
Yeah.
And that can mean various things. It could be in the guidelines very obviously, and there it's EPV appropriate, done. It could all, but part of also what you're saying is this is also a time of potential need for flexibility or for not necessarily coming up with this plan and all in, build it all out, like totally in a very unchangeable way that, which seems to me tricky, both, because some of the imagery we saw, part of the problem was it looked so, almost some of it looked so fixed, some of it looked so stage set, like it has to be a pop-up event for it to, be there or whatever, or the benches are wood slats going horizontally and felt like they were just weird, not quite permanent, but not quite temporary fixed furniture. So it seems like part of it, though, is that you're concerned that over the long term, if it's too site-specific and built in and inflexible, then that could cause problems because we don't know how these transitions are going to work or not work along the way.
You could say that permanent items should be used sparingly. I mean, things that are affixed to the ground and permanent should be used sparingly as a guideline.
Yeah, I think that could be a good, is that seeming, is
Chair.
everyone, unless there's some real obvious, clear reason that otherwise, but as a general thing, keeping that not from being, yeah.
Well,
What are your thoughts?
Chair Grumbine, and I would say, what is, we have this beautifully designed downtown. And what is it about classic?
Now we do?
Classic, I would say the DNA of it.
Okay.
The classic, what is it, a classic, well-designed space. What does it have? What are the characteristics of it? Okay, that it can be, we'll use the courthouse. Here's this just very simple space that can be anything. You can do movies there. You can do weddings. You can do, Earth Day. You can do whatever, during the regular normal time, there's, maybe not very many people over there, and they just kind of come over and have their lunch. Or during a very heavy time like Fiesta or something, then it can be something completely. But it's just a simple, beautiful space for every day that can be then very, you can bring stuff in and make it be like the movies in the summertime. So I would say that is what we need to be keeping in mind, that when we don't want to put a lot of stuff. And of course, plants like to be in the ground. So maybe we are very careful about how that's designed, the street trees, that they're permanent, they don't move. But that we can also have, parades, we can have, farmers market, we can have close down the street for, some special event like Dios de los Muertes in front of the museum. Whatever, close it whenever you want, open it, just like we see in Europe all the time. They have a big, beautiful plaza, and then they come in and put a bunch of tables or chairs, and then they have a big concert that night. So I think that's really the big thing, that we need to just keep it simple and not put a lot of stuff in there, and let it be able to respond to whatever's happening at the time,
Okay, so,
which is a classic, way that we do stuff.
yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
in
No,
HLC land.
I think that makes sense. So sort of simple and
Does that make
flexible
sense? Yeah, very
spaces. Yeah, simple and flexible spaces without overbuilt and then as well, the things that go in them are EPV appropriate.
And then
Okay.
keeping in mind, if you want to go to do some skateboarding, you walk down the street and go to the skateboard park, right? It's right down there on the beach. Or the beach and make a sandcastle, whatever.
Okay, so now I think one of the next comments was on the imagery, and I think this has been tied to for other things, but Commissioner Jordan, you're concerned that you were concerned that the imagery included in the presentation is not aligned with existing design guidelines. Obviously, this has been a lot of the discussion with the EPV, having them in an EPV character. So I think that is going to obviously be part of the change as well.
I'm sorry, can you just, the imagery that is part of the presentation for
That was part
the
of the
master plan
presentation,
is
yeah.
not,
Yeah, it was-
that imagery is not consistent with the guidelines?
Exactly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And suggest potentially that the crafters of that document just work with an HLC member to make sure the graphics match with what the guidelines suggest.
Agreed.
And then the next part is presentation of SSAC enumerates the guiding principles for the master planning effort. There's no mention of the need to preserve the distinct historic character of EPB. And I think this also goes to Commissioner Ensberg's point, so that to have that as, I'd like to seek the addition of a guiding principle that calls for the master planning effort to preserve and enhance the distinctive architectural and urban character of EPV. So having that as the, where are you moment at the, sort of beginning framework of what all this conversation is within. So I'm assuming that, everyone's good with that too. Okay?
I know we want to wrap this up. We talk about imagery, and I reflect back on some of the early presentations by MIG. They were bad. They were really bad. But there were 13 or 14 other State Street Advisory Committee members there that might be the most wonderful thing in the world. I just love this. We're going to have all these places we can sit and talk, and there are fountains and all that kind of stuff. What is a person to do? What would Cass do in that situation? Would you say, stop, everyone? This is not EPV.
Yes.
I should do that. I mean,
Exactly.
I might be run on a rail,
That's why you're there, not us.
Yeah,
You were elected.
it's a tough thing to stop people, like an applicant, and say, this is not EPV. It's tough to do.
And actually, along those lines, I do want to recognize that point as well, because it is, Commissioner Lenvik it's one thing to have a group of commissioners up here that are used to design review and get it, and get the language, get the arguments, get all those things, and to point out those things to an applicant who might not get it. It's another thing to be surrounded by, 16 people that all love what they're saying, and you have to be the lone voice.
Yeah.
Fighting the good fight.
And these are powerful people too. I mean, they're leaders in the community, and to tell them that, what we're looking at is not good.
Yeah.
It's tough to do.
And it is, and I think, so I don't envy that job of yours. I do think that trying to do it, sort of firmly but gently, and finding, I always find when anyone asks me what I think of their architecture, whatever, their house or their whatever, I always try to find 5 nice things to say.
The address. The driveway is nice.
Sometimes it's like you have good air conditioning. But then, and also bring in what is working, and then also simultaneously what's really not working, might be a good way of sort of helping that conversation along. So, but I do, thank you for your time with it, and it is
Yes.
a super important role, and
sacrifice.
hopefully also with this, oh, and actually, sorry, one more thing, Commissioner Ensberg, before I jump to you. I do want to note as well that per our discussion last time, I think the plan is it's continue to be in discussion with staff, is to agendize our HLC meeting to have an agenda item immediately following the SSAC meetings so that we can have these discussions again and have feedback loop for Commissioner Lenvick, and if Commissioner Jordan ends up being there as well, him. So that'll be part of it. And then Commissioner Ensberg, and I want to keep going.
Okay, yeah, I think what we talked about last time, I think what's really important is starting the meeting with reminding everyone, this is not, Upper La Cumbre. I mean, this is El Pueblo Viejo. So I think that statement, and that's what we talked about last time, that opening the meeting with that statement is really crucial to remind everyone that this is where we're talking about. And
Remind everyone at SSAC.
at the SSAC, that should be, number one.
This is not a nicety, it's a requirement.
Well, and not only that, I don't like to push people into things that maybe they may perhaps disagree with, but you can think of, going to Rome and going to the Colosseum. This is our historic area. So we have to preserve it. This is why people come here to see these. It's not that they don't go to the Funk Zone and other places. Like if you're in Paris, you go to the Pompidou Center. But there is the East Bank, and there's, all those historic treasures that people come to see, and that's what we're talking about. So I think it's really important just to pull back and explain that. It's not like we're trying to force something. This is just understanding this is our.
It's a very, very special place.
Yes.
And then how, when working with a special place, how are we making it better?
How do we
is the
preserve it?
question.
And if they want to have other things, in Santa Barbara, well, let's find an appropriate place to put them. Maybe it's not here. Maybe it's not in this location. Maybe it could be somewhere else. But just understanding and not, just it's the law or something to really explain why. Well, here, you can have this.
Commissioner
Just a
Jordan,
very
and then we'll-
quick comment, and I'm trying to formulate this in terms of a general principle. But I came to Santa Barbara from a town in the Midwest that had just completed a campaign to tear down 1,000 vacant houses in 1,000 days and was in the midst of rebuilding a badly damaged downtown. The principle here is that Santa Barbara is a beautiful city already. We're not fixing a problem. So whatever happens should align with what makes this city beautiful. And what makes this city beautiful is already here and already evident.
Mr. Chair,
Yep, Commissioner Butler.
real quick, here's a bad idea. Can we get 15 minutes on the agenda of the State Street Master Plan meeting and sit down and describe ourselves and our role and what we do so that the entire attendees at the next plan understand what the HLC represents in our role? I have a specific, gathering from here that the concern is they really don't know. And when poor Ed sits over there and gets the heck beat out of him because, could we get on their agenda for 15 minutes and say, here's why we care, here's what we are, here's our role specifically, and here's what we recommend in terms of moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, and I think that there's no reason why we could not ask the chair to be at the next State Street Advisory Committee meeting and just offer those kinds of comments to them so that they understand. I mean, I don't know that my being there to offer that, I don't carry the weight that the chair does, but I certainly will make that point. But I think it's a good idea. I think it's a very good idea.
So, and along that lines, I think that's an interesting question in a lot of different ways. So let me get back, let me talk with Ellen and others, staff, and understand, first of all, like what the possible structures are, and then we can kind of maybe go from there. Sure. But I don't know that HLC could be, but there's quorum things and that, but there was also the time where we had the face-off with the De La Guerra Advisory Committee, where we had the dueling tables. But anyways, let me get back to them with it, and then we can maybe have that as part of announcements or whatever for later. Okay, and then and to try to keep moving and wrap this up. So the next was on landscaping, Commissioner Jordan's, and kind of also zooming towards the end of it, he says landscape is an area that demonstrates the concept of variety within unity. And sort of giving as a bad example, in my opinion, a landscape proposal that formalizes landscape along the entire extent of State Street, creating an alley of regularly spaced trees and landscape boxes along the entire street is out of character with the landscape character of EPV. So that was an example of what sort of, what a design that would not be good, and why it would not be good, because it doesn't have the variety and you talk about formality and informality too. And so I think that the landscape aspect is a sort of a super important part of the EPV guidelines, but it's also sort of worthy to note in and of itself that it is that needs to be very, very thoughtfully considered as part of forming the outdoor rooms and everything else, the spaces of the public space.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I would say that general principle could have a blank in it. So, landscape furniture shall be, lighting shall be, landscape, fill in the blank with whatever the element is, needs to be consistent with what our guidelines require.
Mm-hmm. And it also seemed part of where you're getting at it was there might be stuff that even within our guidelines, because our guidelines probably aren't, and I don't know the landscape portion well enough to know off the top of my head whether this is true or not, but I don't think we go zoom out to the urban scale
No, we
very
don't.
much. So it's much more in sort of on a property by property basis. So part of, I think, where that comment was going as well is sort of the extension of the guidelines is also sort of in that mindset, in the Spanish colonial Mediterranean mindset of what landscape does and what those, it's not Paris boulevards of trees. It's not other forms. It has those roots, and so what do those roots get? How do those roots get expressed in an urban at the urban scale? Is maybe part of where that was going. I'm assuming. Okay, so but yes, I think that the fill in the blank is very, very true in terms of looking at the guidelines. All right, so then on to Commissioner Ensberg's, and so a lot of these will have, I think, been tied to in our discussions here, but I want to make sure, and Commissioner Ensberg, feel free to jump in as well, but I want to make sure that we get all of these pieces in here as well in terms of our discussion and if we have agreement. Okay, yeah, so item one of yours was, we already covered, it was the focusing that it is in the EPV, which is a very specific and special thing. Let's see, and how important the EPV is, that goes into two as well. Let's see, just want to make sure. And, okay, so then you also tied in, and we've got Vitruvian Man here. And so, firmness, commodity, and delight, and how those are important parts of our design and what we currently have and what needs to be, kind of going forward. It's one of the other things that you touched on, which I think that hasn't been touched on, I think is really good, is your item 3, Santa Barbara's history is our unique story. It's expressed through our cultural institutions, our events and festivals, and our built environment. And just sort of note, and that all ties into like design that makes sense for here, and in some ways only here, because of our history and our roots and our various things that have happened and our story. And so really tapping into that as a key thing, which isn't, obviously our EPV guidelines are based somewhat on that, but there's so much richness to that, to our story that's important that it is conveyed. And then you have a note about it, which I think has been covered with the EPV guidelines discussion. And that it's going to come through Historic Landmarks Commission, all future work, and that has been master plan aside, as the blocks and as the projects come to us, it will be this review body. That's our current that's my current understanding. That's our current understanding and our strong, I don't want to say insistence because we don't have the actual desire. Yeah. Is that that the review process be coming to us after this. And then So I think that was it. And the next one was to have another meeting agendized, which happened.
Yes, and if I could.
Yeah.
Chair Grumbine. Yeah, I feel really strongly, this is just such an important discussion. I'm thrilled that we have had this discussion today. And I know we have other things, we have other work that we have to do, but I do feel that, in my opinion, that we should be talking, having this agendized every time, even if we can only speak for 20 minutes or something, just to touch base and be sure that we are, following along. Because this master plan is moving quickly, and I know they're pushing to have it, ready for council by summer or something like that. So I don't think it's inappropriate at all for us to have it agendized every time. If we want to, let it go, we can. But if at least it's there, then we're able to respond. We're able to give good information to our liaison. And I just think it's really important. So I'll just say that again and ask that we could agendize it yet again for next time. When is the next meeting of SSAC? Has that been established?
It's March. And without my calendar, I can't tell you, but it's a ways away.
Okay. Well, it's already mid-February.
Yeah.
So it's not that far away, and we only meet every 2 weeks, so.
Yeah, so I think that the request that I think is appropriate is that we have an HLC meeting immediately following every SSAC, and if at that meeting we don't feel like we had the time to actually go through it within our chunk of time, then we can look at agendizing for the following one after that. I'm not sure if you were going here or not, because it seemed like you were at least partly or previously, but are you saying that you think that we should, like, in 2 weeks from now, have another State Street discussion?
That's what I said last time, and then I got, voted down. But we said we would do it today, and then I felt like, well, let's do today and see how we get, and then if we feel like we need another one, we can agendize another one. But I do still feel that it should be like a placeholder, and we should have some time for discussion, even if our agenda is full and we can only do 20 minutes or something. Everybody can do their homework and bring up any issues that they feel are important. But it's happening quickly, like I said, and I think we should be paying attention.
Well, the next State Street Advisory Committee meeting is on the 18th of March.
Okay, 1 month from now.
1 month. And there are going to be a number of small group meetings to work with Tess on what she is putting together for that ultimate presentation. And those small group meetings are going to be, isolated because of Brown Act limitations on the number of people can meet, and we can't talk, whatever. So I doubt that after some of these small meetings in February, that I would even be able to report back to you. I don't know, I'd have to ask Ellen that question later.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I just want to, Ellen Kokenda, I'm really just here to listen, and again, unfortunately, Tess Harris is not here today, but she will be watching. I would use this time to talk about the real specifics, because this is the time that you have, we're already over time at this point. And I think it's most important to be able to have your comments submitted to the State Street Advisory Committee and not be, getting too bogged down in this particular piece of the questions and thoughts that you have. That's just a recommendation that I would have, just to kind of go through and get through your list. And again, I think that what was discussed was the idea of coming back, having a discussion item after the SSAC meeting. That's coming up on March 18th. And that's really all I want to share right now.
Okay.
Do you know, Mr. Chair, whether or not the designs that maybe you are working on will be available at March 18th?
I know that at least some things will be, for sure.
And so once they're exposed on March 18th, then we would be able to discuss them in our meetings following that.
That's right, exactly. Just like we were able to discuss
Yeah,
MIG.
because now we're talking about hypotheticals, no poured concrete benches or whatever. We're gonna see something maybe that is more,
Concrete.
Damn, I knew something.
yeah.
Santa Barbara concrete. Yeah, so the last portion here of Commissioner Lenvick's I want to get through, but I do think that a lot of it is a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, and I think that what I want to do is make sure if we are going to agendize something, we have something really strong to talk about, and that we have a topic, because until we do, I don't. While we got very frustrated not having a discussion at all, I think if we don't have something that we're actually giving specific critique of or thought to, it is almost a waste of time, and is fighting a structure that unfortunately has already been set up, and it is what it is. We no longer are offering our expertise and advice in ways, in a meaningful way, where we can just get into like over-focusing on something that's not there.
Do you, Chair Grumbine, do you think, we've talked a lot today, and we've gotten a lot of things that we've kind of agreed upon? Do we feel like we have, a good draft list, shall I say, call it that? And if so, I mean, right now, we're, about 10 minutes beyond our stop date. Should we agendize it for a very short period next meeting, and then just confirm all of this list of stuff that we've talked about today? Since we're over time and
My
we
interruption,
just-
Mr. Chair. We cannot agendize this. We can't continue this discussion again. So if you want to put together a list of recommendations, I would urge you to get through that today and focus on putting together that list of recommendations today, because we can't agendize another discussion for the following meeting. And again, we will have an agendized discussion return after the next State Street Advisory Committee, but we can't just continue to drag this out every meeting.
Yeah,
I don't call this dragging it out. It's important.
So,
It's the discussion item. that is-
Mr. Chair, I think it would be helpful maybe to get through Mr. Lenvick's comments and get through those questions and try to expedite. We've got applicants on deck waiting. Again, I think it's better to get through those as a communication to the State Street Advisory Committee so that you feel like you've accomplished and have kind of specific comments on different things that have come up, because you identified a lot of the things in the first round conversation. And that's why I don't advise you to focus on this aspect of the conversation. I think it would be best use of your time.
And I agree. I think, so let's go through this list. I think we're going to be able to have this, this is going to be almost a fill in the blank, as we had talked about before, but at least we can have this sort of locked in as official in terms of Commissioner Lenvick's thing. I think that our two main goals were to be able to have a discussion and talk about concepts and agreements and things that we are in agreement on, and as part of that, also to give Commissioner Lenvick, who is our representative there, the sort of marching orders for what our feelings are and thoughts are on it, to go forward. And then that's why I don't think that I think we will go through this list, but I think that any other additional agendized conversation, we're not going to have anything new to discuss. So I don't think it's not a proper use of our discussion time to continue to discuss this item over and over when we've had our chance and there's no new information coming. And I think that that's the key thing. We've had two decent-sized discussions. We've critiqued somewhat, at least at a general level, what the imagery that's there and the design that was there. And we'll have given Commissioner Lenvick our thoughts, and very clearly, I think. And I think we can summarize it for the notes for our minutes for next time. But I think that's where we really should stop with it, because
I think that we could spend a lot of time talking about structures and how they can or can't be, or should or shouldn't be built in the street. There are some powerful forces out there that still are advocating for enclosures, parklets with roofs on, so on and so forth. And I think we have to be firm in whether or not we think that's appropriate to have structures, and particularly if they start blocking the architecture. So, and structures and street lighting, I mean, it's,
I would say, let's go down the line and let's see what we can come up with. I think that, and this is part of the big challenge, is that what basically, if we start getting too particular with it, or too broad brush even, and structures or street furniture or lighting are all perfectly fine examples where we don't want to say we want lampposts on, 35 feet on center.
I agree.
Of this design or this style, and so we don't. All we have is the thing that was proposed in terms of design to critique. So it might be good to give sort of general comments and guidelines and thoughts, but at the same time, without trying to get too specific about whether unless it's very clear that one thing is not EPV appropriate, period, and it's inappropriate to do something as a design move, and we can give that, great. That's a great thing. Like, for example, horizontal wood siding, we can say that's not EPV appropriate, don't do that. But in terms of trying to work out a design for these elements, I think that if there is any scenario where something would be acceptable in the EPV, then we need to leave it open to that and see what the designs are, and then react to that. Because otherwise, I think we're designing in a vacuum, or giving design commentary in a vacuum, and trying to be overly specific at a time where there's nothing in front of us, unless we want to comment on the MIG. So with that, let's go through your list, Commissioner Lenvik. So landscaping in the State Street Master Plan project area is currently informal and not Mediterranean. Does HLC want to see a more formal design in how plants are located and what they should be, or does HLC like the informal landscaping design?
I would say informal.
Yeah. So, and I think that there.
Wait. That was addressed at the last meeting, and we arrived at a conclusion.
Yeah. More
and it wasn't informal.
It was formal?
Yeah.
No, but here's the problem. So the image where that was shown was a modern landscape planter that had informal stuff, and it wasn't composed in a Mediterranean organized type of way. So I think that the problem with the way this question's phrased was more pointed at the MIG design for that image for that planter, and what we described it as being informal. I think that we can find cases of, like the courthouse, where you have all kinds of informal plantings, and you can find cases of more formal plantings. And so
there was the action last week.
But all of the designs for the landscape, I think, could be summarized by saying, I think we want them to be EPV appropriate in a Mediterranean, in our tradition of Mediterranean Spanish colonial rival designs. So that might be, exactly. It could be, at times it could be more formal and have an actual framed short view of something with an array of trees, and then at other times it could be informal and with different asymmetrical clusters. So I think that as long as it's part of our tradition and our landscaping tradition and EPV guidelines, those landscaping, and by extension the larger urban forms of those, and like a giant alley all the way down would be more like a boulevard, a French boulevard, and not like our Spanish colonial revival Mediterranean design. So at the urban scale. So I would just say maybe we can summarize the answer to that being what we've already talked about, which is at the urban scale to be consistent with our Spanish Mediterranean design, geometries and planting palettes.
And also, landscape should be sensitive to the building that it's in front of,
Yep.
Just to cut to the chase, I mean, to me, all of this is detail. And I feel like it's like, look, it needs to be El Pueblo Viejo.
Yep.
This is the DNA of it. This is what it should, look at this book. This is what it all needs to be, and it all needs to be all-encompassing. I don't want to confuse them by saying, well, blah, blah, blah. I think it needs to just be, look, this is what it is. If you have questions, please do come to us and see what they do, and then we can respond to that. But I don't think it's really, I don't think we're going to get anywhere. We already said a bunch of things, that it needs to be classic design as it is right now. I think Commissioner Jordan said it very, very well. What are we trying to fix? and what is appropriate to do to this street. So I think we should just keep it simple, just say it needs to meet everything, El Pueblo Viejo, uncommon, town, and, I don't, flat and flexible, I don't know about that. I think that's a very, very big question that needs to be talked about in great detail and for quite a bit of time. So I just suggest we just simply kick it back and say it's got to be El Pueblo Viejo. If you're not familiar, here's the information.
Well, I would say that, yes, it has to be El Pueblo Viejo, but as the landscaping discussion just indicated, and what we talked about before, there isn't necessarily everything in the guidelines.
On that item,
So,
yes.
and I think at the urban scale, which is the scale that we're talking about, at the block scale or the half a block or 3 blocks or the whole thing, there is some nuance for some of these items anyways, that is more than just go look at the EPV. I think EPV guidelines is for
Right.
sure core, but I think by commenting and saying at the landscape at the larger level should also respect the tradition of these traditions that the EPV is built on is an additional add more than just what it, because if they could do the 14 block alley using EPV approved tree, and there wouldn't be anything in that guideline that said no to it.
Well,
But
we're going to look at it, though, and we will know it when we see it. So, like, when you look at the pictures that MIG put forth, we could go through each one of those pictures and say, well, this is not, this looks like more of a 1970s construct. It's not traditional. It doesn't meet, we could go through each one and critique each one of those images to tell them that. But I don't, I feel like we're kind of going backward, we're trying to, if they want to know what we're talking about El Pueblo Viejo, the historic district, and there's plenty of materials about that.
Well, but as the example I just said, that doesn't, the EPV guideline didn't cover that portion, that additional comment. So I do think that we should go through the list and at
Okay.
least give, even if the answer is the same for all of them, or not a clear decision, but be cautious because of this or that, I think that could be just as simple as we need to get with it.
Would you
All right.
say that the EPV guidelines are providing a building by building recommendation on what
Yeah.
to do, and it's not addressing a bigger picture?
Exactly, and some of these things a bigger picture might be, good to be thinking about with the overall design. So, and landscaping, I think it makes sense if you're gonna look at districts, or if you're gonna look at a block, or if you're gonna look at those different things. I think that looking at landscape as part of that on the larger scale is also an important thought. Whatever that design is, it's an important thought to be thinking at the larger scale too.
Regarding landscaping, speaking to Mr. Uli's comment, just outside of the State Street improvements we have now, maybe starting at Sola or above for 4 or 5 blocks, all there is palm trees. I forget how it's going, but you look up there, and before Robert Engel Hoyt got hold of the downtown, we had palm trees, and we still got them there. And if we want to see what they should look like, you go up there and look at them.
Mm-hmm. And go along, look at Cabrillo as a very clear, as you're driving along the freeway, you see this line of palm
Yeah.
trees that is Cabrillo. You don't know it's Cabrillo, but you know it by its clear landscape move and shape and a large urban scale, right?
Yeah.
And along the Olmsted Drive. So it wasn't per the Olmsted design, but that's the type of thing where I think that just the note is be thinking about it at this larger scale and tie it to our traditions and tie it to.
I think that's it right there.
Yeah.
You just said it.
Okay, lighting,
Yeah, planting plans should be site-specific, but also regional.
yeah, okay, that's a good way of saying it, yeah, both at the micro and the macro, or the region. Okay, and then for lighting, and so, your question was, the current lighting is dark, presentation is inadequate, different lighting is necessary to make State Street more flexible, and be lit better for pedestrians. It seems like that's also part of the whole design of whatever that place is, and the lighting needs to tie to it, and it needs to be EPV appropriate. And it might change by areas, or large areas, or not. Our lampposts change, right? So our lighting itself currently by streets or by blocks or things change. So but it needs to be a strategy that is, designed.
And caution, right now, we've put Tivoli lights across, and if we're going to ever have parades again on State Street, you need to, think of Solstice with these big elements coming down the street. All those lights are in the way of, so there needs to be a clearance or somehow thinking about our events and festivals, and that this lighting works with it.
Yeah, so, that's a good cautionary note of making sure that lighting works with whatever the program is for the public space. Okay, then street furniture, are concrete furniture and benches appropriate EPV? Are there any specific guidance we want to provide on street furniture? I think that is fairly straightforward, except for this additional ad that you brought up, Commissioner Lenvik, which was, so not only does it have to be EPV appropriate, which could be iron, could be wood, could be those things, or it could be, a tile George Washington Smith bench. Now, part of what your comment was, though, was that for street furniture, maybe a general note of wanting long-term flexibility without totally locking in a design forever. It at least is a cautionary, or not cautionary, but like a note, an important note to be considered as going forward, so that everything isn't built in and unchangeable if some of these ideas don't work, or if they work better in other ways. So having some flexibility within the street furniture, but still being EPV appropriate. All right, structures, should there be new structures built in the promenade area? If new structures are allowed, should there be adhered to Mediterranean architecture? There's a potential for new structures to obscure current architecture. Do we feel strong enough about the new structures' potential use that they would be okay in the space or not? So on the structures line, just as a note, so there are currently, it's a hodgepodge, depending, but sometimes there's trellises that are stepping into the sidewalk. Sometimes there's kiosks or other things. Throughout the city, we have various versions of kiosks down to the beach, which we made them design in a basket weave or whatever it was to hide the pay machine in wrought iron, all the way up to we have sandstone, and we have other kiosks and other things. One of the clear things that seemed to be that everyone was agreeing on from last time was that if there are new structures shouldn't be hiding good historic buildings. Shouldn't be blocking them in any way. It seems like there might be room for structures, as there are currently dotted throughout, if they're in the appropriately placed, and not, especially not blocking historic buildings, but just appropriately placed and work with with State Street, but that they're not maybe not a norm unless everyone's feeling like we should have a bunch of structures up and down State Street.
To be subservient to our
to our historic architecture and the character of State Street.
And, I mean, this is also a big discussion because, we have, is it an impediment? Is it in the middle of the street, or is it off on the sidewalk? Like we have at the Lobero, the beautiful little kiosk that's out in front of the Lobero. There's one at the junior high, and there's one out in front of San Marcos building. So, that's an example of that's a metal building, a metal little thing that, but it's, what are we talking about? Are we talking about a structure that you would be inside of and selling stuff out of it? Or is it?
40 tables.
Okay, so what is it?
But that's the part of the problem is, I think, just in a general swath, a structure could be all kinds of things.
Right,
And
so what are we talking
it
about?
is-
And is it in the middle of the street? And if it is in the middle of the street, then have we given proper consideration about, say, parades, or whatever else the street might,
Or
that-
clearance for things.
That restricts the overall flexible use. So it's not just, I think we can say it should be carefully studied and, think about all those things. But
Yeah.
if it is going to be something, then it should be something like the designed El Pueblo Viejo, like those iron ones,
Yeah.
And I think there were some that were made that are in storage someplace in the Paseo Nuevo that were actual, the vending things, like people had stuff.
Yeah, so and I wouldn't want to get too specific on materials, only because I know that there's a number of different structures of different types, but I think the EPV appropriate ones, and a lot of them are in metal, and done so that they don't compete as much with the buildings.
Right, right.
And are also movable. Commissioner Uli?
I thought that we should provide a definition of what we mean by structures. Because just in this short little conversation, we've spoken about all kinds of scoped, I can just imagine scope-sized structures. We should define what we mean, and it would seem to me that whatever the structure is, kiosk or otherwise, should be supportive to the permanent buildings that it is next to, associated with, or support, and shouldn't take over, detract, or cause some other, thing. Within the context of structures, all the parklets are, quote, structures, unquote. My personal opinion is they should expire and go away. And the kinds of structures that we should encourage are information delivering structures like a kiosk or some kind of supportive element, but not a building that you walk into and conduct business, because that's what the buildings on the street are for.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I would
Commissioner.
basically echo the same thing, that we're talking about two different kinds of structures. Ones that are informational kiosks or movable vending carts, something like that, as opposed to anything that's occupiable, habitable by people. So, maybe one salesperson in something is one thing, but, parklets that have seating for 10, 20, 30, 40, are not something I would support.
I would say, and this is actually, I think, gets to the core of what, how something is used and what its purpose is, and how that then informs and creates that urban space. So dining as a structure, you don't see that, first of all, you don't see it anywhere in Santa Barbara as like structures out in public, not for the present years accepted. And it's also not a type, you can look at European cities, in Spain and Italy, and that the outdoor dining experience is something else. When you have and all of our traditions of structures are range from shading structures, trellises, things like that, informational and kiosk structures, supporting structures to that purpose. Nothing of our current structures have to do with that, step into the public realm like that, at least as I know, have to do with dining. So the dining use and a structure our uses and structures are linked in a lot of ways. And I think that maybe is part of our difficulty with discussion of just general structures, is because, some structures are good and are appropriate for El Pueblo Viejo and the way in which the city that we're trying to create within that tradition.
Is a suggestion. Is a structure that needs to be ADA compliant a threshold for describing structures? Because you can have a kiosk, or you can have, some of the parklets that have come down because they were not ADA compliant. So is that a threshold for identifying structures?
Well, because then you can just build a big building in the middle of State Street, or whatever. You can put up the size of a train car, in the middle of State Street, and as long as you get it accessible. I think it was sort of the accessibility was the thing that made some of them go away, but it wasn't actually the thing that was the core to like whether it was EPV appropriate or not.
Maybe, as the vice chair suggested, something that requires an occupancy permit might be a good trigger. A rolling kiosk on big wheels is not an occupied structure. It holds watches and cell phones or whatever they're peddling, but a person doesn't go in them.
Mm-hmm. So, and this is maybe a stab at it would just be to say that the structures as commonly used in the public right-of-ways, as current practice, current practice being pre-COVID, current practice of structures, those types of structures that we have seen throughout the city. Or historic, or in the EPV tradition. Let's just use it that way, because I think that there's a good handful, and there's probably some that we're not thinking of too, that are part of our EPV tradition that we have accepted, that we do like, that add nicely to the character of the city that we've already accepted, and those are the types that are appropriate. And that way we can kind of leave it, might be appropriate. Good, that's right. Might be appropriate. Okay, so that'll be our structure statement. And then mobility, And I think Commissioner Lenvik was saying, let's just not, we don't have controls over bikes and autos, and other people walk, so maybe we shouldn't get concerned with this. I would say the only thing that we could add as a general comment for mobility is that mobility is part of character defining of the space. And if we're talking about public space, we need to say that, I don't think we need to say, but I think one thing to say is our mobility should be in keeping with the character of Santa Barbara that we want that space to present. For example, Plaza de la Guerra has a certain feel right now, and when the road eventually, if the road eventually gets raised and made into a more European plaza where there is no curb from that has a certain feel, and that the form of the and actually we can just say El Paseo for argument's sake. El Paseo in the inner plaza of El Paseo, it has a certain character and feel. If we were to open a throughway that went right through it and increase a massive traffic thing, that would change the actual feel of it, of the place. And so I think that it has to be, we can maybe put a cautionary note that to making sure that the mobility reinforces the character of the downtown Santa Barbara and the experience, as opposed to going against it. And maybe that's a simple way of just making our note, but without saying we believe in bikes or we don't believe in bikes, or we believe that we should have cars or no cars or whatever, but just sort of as a general principle of reinforcing a person-friendly downtown.
Can
And
Can we call it
traditional
a
downtown.
circulation element? To me, mobility is a little odd word, because to me, it's the
That's true.
circulation element. And when we design buildings, we are very concerned about the circulation element, and it's very much part of the design. And I would argue that, we have a downtown that has a circulation element of a main street that Commissioner Jordan so clearly stated, and that has this network of paseos off of it, and that's our El Pueblo Viejo. So to me, this whole, I think it's wrong for us to be out of the discussion about that. I think it's very much part of the aesthetic and of how the whole piece works, just like any other building and all of the pieces that are part of that.
Okay, so maybe I will just, I agree with the mobility critique as well, or the use of the word mobility. I think circulation is more true in terms of what it's trying to define. Yeah, what's that? Descriptive, yeah, thanks. So maybe we just say that, that the circulation element enhance, or at least reinforce and enhance the character of the downtown of Santa Barbara. Of the historic character of the downtown of Santa Barbara, and the sort of friendly and beloved character of it for the pedestrian or for the person.
And anyone.
Yeah, for anyone, for locals and visitors. Okay, so then flat and flexible. So the comment I would have on that is you look at European cities and plenty of them don't have sidewalks. If things can be gotten to work, that those can work, then okay, so be it. We don't absolutely need curbs and sidewalks, but it's just like Plaza de la Guerra is showing us. But it is a matter of whether things can work and how they work, not whether we can just say for sure one way or the other. We would say flat and flexible or not.
Can we say flexible, period, and whatever it takes to get there, but,
Flat or otherwise?
again.
Yeah, and in terms of locking in on one or the other, it depends on what the design is, right?
Yeah,
It's not
we'd
like.
like it to be
yeah.
flexible, and we don't know whether flat is going to get us there or not. But flexible, to a great degree flexible, given all of the other constraints.
Yeah, is everyone good with at least flexible?
Yep.
Yeah, and okay, great. Okay, so we,
Flexible on it.
we're flexible on it. All right, so they're good. I think we've gotten through our, list. We've gotten some specificity and also some non-specificity. So with that, I think we're gonna be closing those items. And then I would ask that we at least have those notes to review for our minutes for next time.
I would just like to check with admin that you feel like you've put together a list of consensus items for.
Yeah, I was taking notes throughout when he.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, almost all those are quotes from other people's statements.
And
So,
it's recorded.
Yeah, and it's recorded, that's true. All right, okay, great, thank you, everyone. Okay, so with that, we'll close that item, and we'll go on to item 3. This is Certified Local Government 2022, 2023 Annual Report. And we was agendized for 2:40, so we are
45 minutes late.
42 minutes late.
Okay. Where's Ms.
So we'll try to keep things rolling. She probably gave up on us.
Yeah. She's probably watching it on TV
Yeah.
on her way down.
So.
Will those guys never
and-
finish?
All right, so this is for review and approval of the Certified Local Government 2022, 2023 Annual Report as required by the California Office of Historic Preservation. And so we'll just,
So I think this item is being presented by our architectural historian, who I'm sure is on her way down.
I hear footsteps.
I hear steps on the staircase.
Pitter patter of historian feet.
Thank you, Johnny Gilbert. Hey,
Right.
were we putting you to sleep?
EPV, blah, 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 EPV. Oh, is it your birthday? Oh, happy
Yes.
birthday.
And Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Double
All
whammy.
right. For the record. All right. All right. Great. So let's dive in.
Okay, so I don't know if you had a chance to look at the document, but every year the state has us fill out an annual report to keep our certified local government status as a historic certified local government. And they require that you review the document and accept it. So I'll just go over some of the highlights. It really just describes what we did this past year. Their annual year goes from October 1st through September 30th. So it's October 1, 2022 through September 30th, 2023. So we did one landmark designation in that time, which was State Street Parkway. We designated 15 structures of merit that year, and we added 16 additions to the Historic Resources Inventory. Many of those were identified in the African American Black Historic Context Statement, and some from the Small House thesis statement that we reviewed. And we also had adopted 12 new Mills Act applications, and they asked how many projects you reviewed as a commission on consent or full board on historic resources, and there were 68, which is a lot.
Let's go.
You guys are busy. That doesn't include the admin projects. And then they did ask if you had 3 topics you would like them to provide trainings on. I don't know if they ever will do many trainings, but I think Commissioner Dordan and I went to one of their trainings, and it might have been just a little basic, we thought. But if you have, as a commission, any topics you would like to be trained on, I can put it in our report. I wonder if they read the reports. I don't know. They ask for all the trainings that we did last year, and most of them we did in the commission on styles as we were adopting styles.
Okay. So
That's it.
anyone have any ideas of what they want to be trained on? Counting cards?
Yeah, counting cards.
I would suggest, I'm really interested in the hyphen and, the additions to historic buildings where you maybe add a more contemporary building, but you match up the, the sill and height of the windows. You keep the banding the same, but then you have a hyphen to connect it through. I don't know. I think that could be a really interesting discussion. I'd love to see more of that or examples of how that has been done, especially as we're trying to, get more housing and the changes that we're seeing. How would that be done?
Okay. I can also show you some. They have some in the Secretary of Interior's guidelines.
We have better ones.
And I think Office of Historic Preservation, their training efforts are more technically rounded, not broad conceptual things, right? So if we wanted training on how to evaluate a project according to CEQA, that would be something that they would do.
Yeah.
Just to set your expectations.
Most of you have already reviewed their
Shippo's not gonna come
recorded.
down here and have
Yeah.
a warm and fuzzy conversation about the meaning of things.
They have a pre-recorded Secretary of Interior standards that most of you, I think, you've watched as a requirement.
Yeah, yeah.
We did our time.
Right.
Just one question. Was it 12 fresh new Mills Act contracts or 12 total including renewals?
12 new, so I didn't include the renewals, but we had 14 with the 2 renewals that we did, and 75 total that we have in active.
Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right.
So we just need, then you can just make a motion to accept the report.
I'll move to accept and
Second.
adopt or whatever the certified local government 2023 annual report.
Do you second the
I
whatever?
had to second it before, before Keith did.
All right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Do you have to do public comment and all that other
Oh,
business?
yeah, that's true. Shoot, that's a good catch.
I mean,
Yeah, you jumped the gun and I just went with it, so. All right, so we will open public comment at this time.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. At this time, I don't have any speaker slips for this item. If you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. I'm not seeing any movement, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. I'm not seeing any hands raised, and we also did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Grumbine.
I'm shocked we didn't get correspondence on this item.
So controversial.
Yep. All right, we are, okay, so with that, back to the commission. We got a motion, and actually, I'll retake your motion now,
I'll just repeat my motion.
okay?
I'll repeat the second.
All right. All right, motion is second, under discussion. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Dordan,
Yes,
Commissioner Innsberg,
Yes,
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, great, all right, thank you. Okay, on to item 4 now. We are still almost 40 minutes late, so we'll try to keep charging here. So 531 East Ortega Street, this is a continued item for concept review. This is listed on the Historic Resources Inventory, designed in 1964 by Robert Inglehoyt in the mid-century modern style. The project consists of redevelopment of the existing site to accommodate a junior high school campus for Providence School. This project involves additions and alterations to the existing single-story main building, demolition of the existing gymnasium, and construction of a new 10,500 square foot gymnasium, a new 4,900 square foot two-story building comprised of a theater, library, and chapel, and a new 4,200 square foot two-story building comprised of additional classroom and office administration space. The project includes alterations to the existing surface parking lot to accommodate a total of 40 uncovered vehicle spaces, new bicycle parking, grading, and landscape hardscape improvements throughout the site. Planning Commission approval is required for a development plan to allow for the construction of 11,200 square feet of non-residential floor area, a modification for the regulations for a new non-residential structure in the RM zone requiring 12-foot interior setbacks and conditional use permit to allow the operation of a school use in the RM zone. This is a focus review on the aesthetic appropriateness of the modification requests. No final appealable action will take place at this meeting. Project compatibility findings and major alterations findings will be required for project design approval. Project was last reviewed October 11th, 2023. Welcome.
And Mr.
So,
Chair,
yes.
before we start, just to summarize, so as it says and as you read into the record, the purpose of this hearing is to receive specific comments on their modification request. Certain portions of the development are within the required 12-foot interior setback. And just so it's clear why that setback is required in this case, since this is a residential zone, the RM zone, it's a multifamily zone, any new non-residential building or additions is subject to a 12-foot rather than the required 6-foot setback that would be applicable to residential development. And so I'll turn it over to the applicant for that. This project is on track to go to the Planning Commission in the next month, so they are looking for positive feedback regarding the aesthetic appropriateness of the development. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. All right, so if you would introduce yourselves to the record. And we'll go through the minutes and the motion in a second here. And then you'll have 15 minutes to present, and we'll go from there. So if you want to introduce
Chair Brian Cornell.
Steve Noon.
I would suggest that we not go through this, and I'll tell you why. This is something that we all missed, including staff. We have not done anything to the architecture since our last review, because we've been doing what we need to do to get to the Planning Commission. So all of this is going to be addressed when we come back.
Okay.
For project design approval. We're obviously going to the Planning Commission with exactly what you saw the last time. So we're really back here simply to make sure to get the board's opinion on if this mod is acceptable or not.
Okay. Let's see if there's any, I just want to make sure there's no comments that are, that's good to know. It might still be good to jog everyone's memory of what was said, and then we'll just focus on the thing that you're asking.
I was just trying to.
Yeah, I know. No, it's good. We might, we might not get to any of this, but it'll be good just as a reminder. So, okay, so one was to continue to the Planning Commission with the following comments. 1, the commission thanks the applicant for the great presentation, additional design improvements, and listening to previous commission comments. The project is beautiful as presented, and the courtyard is nicely done. So you didn't want me to read that?
Well, no, it's great. Don't read anymore.
Yeah. Add a cap, roof extension, molding, or other profile to the top of the gym and theater. 3, study less bright shades of white for the plaster. 4, study the glass railing design. Some commissioners feel that the railing design does not need another railing language. Wrought iron is suggested given the proposed school use and because the project already has wrought iron fencing as a base language. 5, simplify the planting palette. The commission understands more information is forthcoming with the decision from the city arborist, the street tree for the site. 6, restudy the windows of the west elevation to the gym and theater with the geometry of the other windows on the site in mind. Consider breaking them up to look more residential. 7, study the administration glass box element to add more expression on the corners. Some commissioners feel the glass box element is not successful. All right, and then is there any more?
Is there any more?
Yeah. Add the trees between 8, add the trees between the neighbors and the gym on the north side of the property.
That's relevant.
Okay, so there we go. See, we found. And 9, the commission feels that the 3D presentation, site sections, and neighbor studies were sufficient. Story poles are not needed. 10, the size, mass, bulk, and scale are appropriate. 11, the historic resource on the site was addressed appropriately. The commission appreciates the changes and additions to the site. The motion was by House, second by Drury, 8-0-0. Uli was absent. The motion carried.
I did watch the tape.
Okay,
FYI.
great. Thank you, Commissioner Uli. All right, so with that, it sounds like item 8 was one that might be relevant, so if you want to address that as well and just state your kind of what you're asking for and any argumentation for it.
So you can see from the site plan that basically that 12 feet is we do not have that around the back corner of the gym, so that new gym condition. And obviously, you know, from the very beginning, that was a struggle to fit this gym in. As you recall, I don't know, Steve, if you can go to the section. So we're 6 feet instead of 12 feet. If we look at the section, we can see how much it is buried in the ground. So you have a net height from the adjoining grade of 18 feet even So that's very consistent with the residential character. And then finally, I think one of the justifications for the mod is we are built out all the way around it. I don't know if our site plan shows clearly the footprints of the adjacent residents. It doesn't quite show that. It shows one of them. Maybe that aerial would be good, but a lot of those buildings already are in excess of their setback, and so that helps a little bit along there. But we obviously will add significant landscaping in that remaining 6-foot setback area because there's really not going to be any need other than, painting somewhere along the way to get back in there.
Okay.
So I think that's what we're looking for is obviously comments to the Planning Commission that is acceptable.
Okay. Does that complete your presentation?
That does.
All right.
Is there landscaping to look at?
We
Landscape plan.
have the old landscape plan in there. Do we have it in the set? I'm pretty sure we do.
And you want to zoom in there? Yeah.
So we obviously have a continuous hedge now, but your comments were to add trees, which I think is a good one, so that'll be obviously possible. We may have to espalier them against the wall of the gym, but it's doable.
Okay. All right.
On the prior comments, what did we say to the Planning Commission?
Whether we believe this is as for a modification, is it okay for, let's see.
No, before you were just sending it on.
What did we say to
with
the
positive-
positive?
What did we say to the Planning Commission?
We just sent it on with those.
Positive comments.
No comment, okay.
Yeah. Okay, Commissioner, yeah.
I have a question.
Commissioner
So on the west side of the gym,
Pardon my interruption, Mr. Chair.
Oh,
Can
yeah,
we go to
sorry, we're
public
not going to
comment
go to
before
the
we go into
questions yet.
questions?
Sorry,
Thank you.
yeah. We got to go to public comment first. Okay, so if that completes your presentation? Okay. All right, so let's go to public comment now. Anyone in the room wishing to comment on this item? All right.
All right, thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. I'm not seeing any hands raised, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Grumbine.
All right. So it's the commission for questions.
I have a question. On the west side of the gym, the foundation's buried many feet below grade, but on the south side, could you design the footing such that it doesn't encroach into the 6-foot number, but it just stays under the building completely? Or do you have a section through that part of the gym and property line?
So just to be, you're saying instead of having instead of a T-shaped footing, have it go
Yeah, 'cause
back?
that would let our roots be more productive.
I'm sure we can do that.
And sorry, can you hover over the section that you're, just so we're all confirming what area you're talking about for that?
Well, if you go to the
You
section.
were talking about the west
Yes.
side.
Okay.
Well, no, that one
Both
appears
sides.
to be, well, I guess both sides.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
the west seems like it's way deep, so.
yeah, and there is an existing little retaining wall along that west side now that we are leaving in place, just FYI. But I guess we don't have a section through that. So you want to go back to that other section? We can just be clear what we're talking about.
Maybe it's a moot point because of how deep the building's being set.
It is deep. I would defer to you as far as how deep we should go relative to just making sure that there's room for the trees. Just go back to the section you were on. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, it's pretty deep.
Yeah, that one I think's not an issue at all. I was thinking the other side, the far side.
Yeah.
Because then it'll probably slope, right? At one point, it'll probably be the high, or it'll be super deep, and the other point, as it goes along, it'll start to.
Yeah, it never daylights, but I think that's clearly doable with the slab construction. Should be no problem.
Okay.
All right. All right, other questions?
Chair Rumbine, have you, we didn't hear from any of the neighbors at all today, or I don't think we have. Have you reached out to the neighbors, or have you heard from any of them? Are they all feeling good about it?
Jay, I don't think I mean, a long time ago, but.
North side we have.
Yeah, 'cause the housing authority is on, I mean, we've reached out to the housing authority on the west, and to the north, it was during the beginnings of this. But we didn't notice them relative to this mod, although they obviously will be noticed for the planning commission. Oh, they were, okay.
A new notice, sorry.
Thank you.
A new notice went out there. Just read it into the record, so.
A new notice went out.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, well, comments? Commissioner Uli?
Given the fact that the back end of the building is substantially buried, and the visible edge of it is generally the scale of a residential building, I don't have an issue with the modification.
Oh, I had one quick question, actually, that reminded me. What is the height, like, if you maxed out that gym, height-wise, what would it be, what would be the allowable height?
We've got it at the height that it needs to be a
I don't
regulation
know, but just out of
gym.
curiosity, what is the max height for that area, if that was at the maximum it could be?
It's
Do you remember it's 25 feet?
clear to structures 25 feet.
What, sorry, that's what's allowed, or that's what it is, or both?
Oh, what's allowed?
Yeah,
Oh, I could go 45 feet.
Yeah, it's
okay.
it's way up there.
Yeah.
I could be 12 foot back and go 45
Go for it,
feet.
that's what I was
up in the
wondering,
air.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. All right, other comments? Anyone else want to jump in? Commissioner Ensbury?
Thank you. I think this is a great project, and I don't have a problem. I agree with Commissioner Uli, and excited for it to move forward. So definitely positive.
Thank
Okay, any other comments that aren't positive?
Did we give our sense of the compatibility findings last time as our comment to the commission?
Let's pull up those.
Because I think
minutes again and
I think
see.
we were asked to do that as well.
I want to say we did.
I think we did.
Besides best.
I mean, we don't need to make them until
No.
final, but I think we already said it was.
Can we scroll up a little bit?
Usually you do, but
Yeah.
I don't think I saw it in these
know if-
minutes.
Are you, if we didn't, are you looking for them?
It could have been in a previous review.
The one before?
Through the chair, Commissioner Uli, I think it would be helpful to the Planning Commission if you do want to just specifically include in your motion today that it's consistent with the project compatibility findings that you'll have to make for project design.
I was making a
approval.
motion?
If you do want to make a motion, and generally appropriate to the neighborhood. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I'm hearing only positive things. Does someone want to make a motion?
Sure, why not? We're continuing it to the planning commission, right?
Mm-hmm.
Move to continue 531 East Ortega Street to the planning commission. And if you give me those findings, we'll just kind of read them into the record.
You don't have them memorized?
Oh, God, no.
Or you can also just do the general there. Oh, there you go. Okay, great.
Without making these findings, I think the project is generally consistent with our design guidelines. It is compatible with its neighborhood as described and treated. The buildings are appropriately sized, massed, bulked, height, and scaled. It is sensitive to the landmark that's sitting on the property. Views of the ocean and mountains are not impacted, and there is appropriate use of open space and landscaping.
I'll second that.
All right, we've got a motion and a second under discussion.
And then, Mr. Chair, I didn't hear it formally supportive of the requested modification.
Oh, yes. I think I said that before I made the motion.
Yeah.
I'll still second it.
All right, great.
And one just minor footnote, Robert Inglehoyt was a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. Just FYI.
Also,
FAIA.
if I recall, didn't we suggest that you study the shape of the windows on those residential adjoining elevations?
Yes, that was in the minutes.
and
on
actually-
the- for the
I-
gymnasium.
And actually, I would ask if under discussion, ask if the makers in the motion and second would add that to include the comments from last time, the comments in the motion
Yeah,
from last
they
time.
carry
To
forward.
carry them forward as, to be addressed in the future.
Yeah,
In our
I
future
would agree with that.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Any
One other
discussion?
question, yes, thank you, Chair Grumbine. We had a discussion about the detailing of that dental.
The dentals.
The dentals, and where did that go?
I think when we did that, my tooth was gone.
So his tooth's back, but the dentals aren't.
I can answer that. It is actually reflected in this submittal for
Okay.
those to be restored.
Great, okay, well,
All right.
Commissioner Uli brought up Robert Inglehoyt, so let me think of that, thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Limbick,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Dordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Insberg,
Yes,
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right.
Thank you
you.
very much.
you.
I appreciate it. I noticed the last time we ended at 3:43, and
I know.
now we're
I
three,
noticed that.
almost.
All right. Okay, well, we are on, do we want to take a 5-minute break?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Do a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll all be on to our last item. And we'll have caught up sometime. Calling back to order, Historic Landmarks Commission, February 14th, 2024. We are now continuing with item 5. This is a continued item for project design approval and final approval. This is 225 Equestrian Avenue. It's located in the EPV. The project site is currently developed with a warehouse and attached apartment. Proposal to demolish the existing on-site structure and construct a new 3-story, 6,300 square foot mixed-use building comprised of a 3,300 square foot single-unit residence, a 623 square foot accessory dwelling unit, a 1,600 square foot commercial office, and a 580 square foot attached two-car garage. On appeal, the Planning Commission upheld the staff hearing officer's approval of the setback, encroachments, and open yard modification on December 14th, 2023. Project design approval and final approval are requested. Project compatibility findings are required. The project was last reviewed July 12th, 2023. And welcome. If you will introduce yourselves for the record, and then we'll go to the minutes from that last review, and we'll go from there.
Jeff Shelton, architect.
Maddie Shelton with Jeff Shelton Architect. Katie Klein, landscape architect.
All right. Okay, great. And do we have anything notes from staff before we do?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So nothing really to add. It was all described in the project description and footer, but just to reiterate, they're requesting project design approval and final approval at this hearing. So if the commission decides to approve the project today, in your motion, please go through the project compatibility findings and specifically state why the project meets each finding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Lundvik?
Yes, staff, could you tell us where this has been since we last saw it?
Thank you. Through the chair, Commissioner Lundvik. So since the commission last reviewed this project conceptually, it was reviewed by the staff hearing officer for 2 setback modifications, one for a 6-inch setback abutting the 3-story residence at 223 Equestrian Avenue, and then also for portions on the other side of the building, including a stair landing and deck areas, as well as an open yard modification. All 3 modifications were approved by the staff hearing officer. That decision was appealed to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission reviewed the appeal and upheld the staff hearing officer's decision in December. And that's where it's been. Thank you.
All right. All right. So our motion from last time was to continue indefinitely to the staff hearing officer with the following comments. 1, the commission thanks the applicant for continuing to work with the neighbor and trying to shift the design to work so that the neighbor still has some of their view. Overall, it is a talented design. 2, the commission understands that private views are not protected, but the commission appreciates the applicant doing the additional work to work and using story poles to understand how the design will affect the neighbor. The commission also understands the current situation with the neighbor, and with the neighboring building being at the lot line has created additional hurdles for the applicant. 3, overall, the mass, bulk, and scale are compatible. While it is a large building and some commissioners believe the project should be reduced, especially in particular elements such as the tower, a majority of the commissioners feel that the current mass, bulk, and scale as designed is compatible with the neighborhood and it acts as a transitional design from the larger to the smaller residential buildings in the neighborhood. 4, the reduction of some of the colors and materials is appreciated, but the commission feels it needs to go an additional step to reduce the bright and strong colors, especially in the front. The reduction would also help the project be more compatible with both the neighborhood and the El Pueblo Viejo guidelines. 5, study the pomegranate tower, either in color, shape, or both, to be less exuberant and in consideration of the neighbor's view. 6, the commission is in support of the open yard modification. The motion was by House, the second was by Uli. It was 8-0-1. McClure abstained, motion carried. All right, so with that, if you all have up to 15 minutes to present, and if you can make sure to address each of the comments, as well as, because this is for design approval and final approval, make sure to walk us through your details, et cetera, that fulfill your final approval level drawings. Okay.
Great. All right, thanks. Good afternoon, and we're here, like they said, for preliminary and final. We feel we have a set of drawings and designs that meet all the expectations. And we'll address all these comments as we come through to them. Go to one. So we have a big set of drawings. A lot of it's regular stuff. Let's go right to the site plan, 121. Yeah, we can come back to this for reference from time to time, but this basically shows the modification we had and how we're articulating the street. And you've all looked at that before. That has not, that portion has not changed. Go to 1.4. Go to mod 3. Okay, this once again, this is our problem, and we've gone through it a number of times. But it's that big blank wall up there on the right, and that is what the whole reaction is to. And with the other photos, you can see the sizes of the buildings, and we're matching the building at 223 next to us. That's sort of been the whole concept here. Next. C2.1. Just in case it comes up, here's our stormwater management plan by Ashley Vance. We're putting these tanks under the front driveways, the main concept here. Next. 1.6. Oh, let's go through the landscape. We'll come back to landscape. And once again, here we go on the bottom here, the bottom row shows you where we've come from when we started with you in December of last year. The one on the left is the more exuberant one. And as we came into, and then we moved the stairwell for our neighbors to the right side in the middle one, still better, but more exuberant. We've also moved the whole middle back. And then the one you haven't seen is the one on the right. And this is brighter than, we have a color board here, we'll help you out there. It's not that, it's navy blue really on our screen. But this shows the tower moved back another 10 feet, 6 inches. We'll get into that. I know there's a couple of members that really wanted us to do that, and so did the owners next door. And we moved that back to give them their mountain views that they wanted. And we brought the model in so you're going to be able to see that, really how that affects their views. So that was our big change. We've also made some changes we'll see on simplifying the architecture here. Next, go to the top of this drawing. Same thing in the back. It just kept getting simpler and simpler, sort of reducing number of elements on the building. In general, that's what I went after doing, and having a fewer elements. Go to the next. Then on the side here, if you look at the top, that was the first one we saw. You saw a second one was down here on the left, and that one they liked it more, and then we moved it back another 10, the stair tower, another 10 feet, 6 inches back through some great gymnastics, but we figured out how to do that. And that gave them their mountain view that they wanted. Next. And this once again, on the comparison, one on the left, what you first saw. Second, we moved the building back on the third floor 35 feet to match theirs, third floor. And then, since we saw you, we moved that whole the tower, the stairwell, back without taking away our courtyard, which is so valuable to the whole idea of the design. And this opened up their view. And at this point, we did get a letter from them saying thank you for that, and they appreciated all the changes. And it broke down to the size of our vegetables in the garden here, where this whole thing broke down. So. I think we did quite a bit for both them and a few commissioners were really wanting us to push that tower back. Next, 1.5. Let me look at my timer here. Okay, 1.5. Oh, we have floor plans here if you want to go through them, but it's business on the bottom, his business, their business, and then residential on the top two, an ADU on the second floor there in the back. Next. We can always come back to these for reference, but the whole courtyard was the goal to this project. There's where the proposed solar panels will be. Go back. And the neighbors next door have more than this. I mean, it's just a big solar panel area up there, and these will not be seen from the street. Next. Here's our black and whites. Will help you see what's going on without the color. Go to the next drawing here. This shows you this area right here where we moved the tower back. I guess circle that. That's where it was, and then we moved it back to there. The top drawing there shows you what the big blank wall is up against our building there. Next. This, if anybody has questions about the west side, or I guess it's the east side towards the 1960s apartment, we look out through this bottom one, circle this bottom area there, through these stairs to sort of block the view of their apartment, and they can't see our apartment. So it's kind of a fenestrated wall there with stairwells in it. Next. Blow up the whole top area. That's how we move that stair back. It's kind of an Escher-esque Rube Goldberg entry that sort of winds your way in some fun way through some oddities, but I think it works for the building, and it let us move that whole tower back. And once again, we have a color board here. That screen, I don't know about yours, is very bright. Ours it's a navy blue. We'll get to the color board in a second. But this is a dark blue tile, cement tile. It's this color right here. So as you look at it, it's a darker blue, and the pomegranate is this deep red here.
You can actually put it here. Let's put it on and then we'll pass it around.
So, and we have a color board that
TV, can you?
we have a color board that is accurate also.
City TV, can you zoom in on the material color board? Thank you.
So that's our color board. It's not monotone. We have just blue now. It started out multicolored. It's dark blue with a light blue window, and that's pretty much. We'll let the plants add to that on the landscape. Let's go to the next something here. This is the side. This is from the 1960s apartment looking. That stairwell is just to sort of block both people's view a little bit. It could be more open if we wanted it to. Next. Wall details. All the walls are 12-inch exposed, at least 12 inches thick. Some are 18. Nice plaster movement. Basically everything I read in the El Pueblo Viejo on all these details. Next. Once again, the same sort of care for details here. Next. That's an 18-inch wall right there. Bunch of details. As I go through the El Pueblo Viejo afterwards, I see that we did hit every 21 out of 24. We took care of a careful review of how we're supposed to treat these items. The front is this tile up to on the first floor. It's this matte finish cement tile, blue and white. This very classic top, bottom, middle, top. And next, there's the dome in question. You can blow up that bottom section if you want. There's the tiles to the left, but it's 8 foot across. It's got some ferro cement plant parts up there. It has been toned down in color. The fact is, when you look at the model, we've brought this in really, you can't see it on camera, but the idea is your eyes, that whole back, it's set back 29 feet now. It really does not dominate a street. You're looking, you will barely see it from Equestrian Avenue. You'd have to get across the street. Not that I don't want to see it, but it won't dominate. So it's going to really read more as a two-story building here on Equestrian. Next. And more details, that's blending into what Katie will be talking about. A few decorative tiles on the front 3 risers. We're up 2 feet. Go ahead. Parapets, parapet gutters, etc. Maddie, could you go back to sheet, the main elevation? Yeah. On color. As bright as it is. So what we did here is, if you look, we simplified that whole railing. We have one balcony. We have one iron balcony right over on the left there. Just a simple little balcony to break up that tower there. And that's really the ironwork that you're going to feel at the street. The rest of it is these pierced parapets, stolen straight from some fun buildings in Sevilla. So it's just a simple language all the way around the building. And we've reduced the ironwork quite a bit on this. There's a little bit between the tower and the main building up there, but it's 35 feet back. So the main thing was simplification of elements. All the doors are now this light blue stain to match the windows. One door, the front door is yellow so we can find it. But we sort of just kept everything in, I don't want to say monotone, but it's red, it's got this blue and then playing off the dark blue. And that's how, you wanted me to be less exuberant, and I think it still works.
That must have been hard.
It was hard. So that's how we got there. Just taking stuff off and putting and simplifying, taking away elements. Let's go back to the end of the details, Maddie, and give Katie a little bit of time here. I guess that's the last one, some interiors. Oh, some ironwork. The ironwork is a Payne's gray, kind of matching. You'll see it in the color board, kind of a grayish blue. Next, Maddie, and that's probably it. Color board. We have a color board here. If you'd like to see it, it's the colors here, but it's this one in the more accurate colors than on the screen. And Katie?
You go, Maddie, to the set for me. So nothing has significantly changed. We're just including all of the compliance details for final. So if you want to go to the next sheet, this is the lighting. All we're proposing is just a simple path light down that walkway to the back. Irrigation meets compliance. Keep going. And then this is the hardscape plan, so nothing significantly has changed. The driveway is colored concrete squares with a gravel gap, and then we're doing flagstone for the front entry, and then also the path back, and then the courtyards and the back patio or tile to match architecture. And the images explain basically what we're proposing. If you go to the next sheet, these are just our details of some of the hardscape. And then planting, we got more specific. So the front entry planting is mostly aloes. We do have these euphorbia cactus to give more vertical massing up the elevation. And then we have Chinese mahogany, that pink tree to the right, to the right of the entry to also give some height. And then down the back, the side path planting, you can see the images there. We have cordyline growing up on the sides. That's kind of that pink symbol to give height to that 7-foot wall. And then we have a Hardenbergia vine growing up there. And then to block the backflow, we're doing the tea plant, the cordyline. And then in the back is palms. So back courtyard planting, you can see the images. We're doing some kencha palms. In the courtyard, we're doing the date palm. as you're aware. And then in the top left corner, we're doing a ceiba tree that is a large silk floss tree. And that's about it. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Okay. Is there anything else that finish your
I
presentation?
think that does, yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll now open public comment. So I'll let you take this one away.
All right, thank you, Chair Grumbine. At this time, I do have 4 requests to speak, so I'll go ahead and start with Rick Westerman. If you want to make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
And next on deck will be?
Up next, we'll have Jane Westerman.
All right.
Well, James and my comments are exactly the same, 3 minutes. With the commission's permission.
Sure. That's, yep. Just, oh, sorry.
Oh, I thought it was on. Well, we've made 4 previous presentations to the city planning representatives on the HLC, the show, and the Planning Commission regarding the proposed development of 225 Equestrian. Each time we've tried to present additional information based on our discussions and those of other hearings as well as the HLC. There's been a lot to digest, and we appreciate your consideration. Combined with ours, the owners of 8 properties have raised concerns over the project's size, bulk, and scale, as well as neighborhood compatibility. At the HLC meetings, a majority of the commissioners also voiced concerns with regard to size, bulk, and scale, and/or neighborhood compatibility. Quote, doesn't fit in with the neighborhood, doesn't fit within the historic district or follow the guidelines. Floor to area ratio much larger than other projects and maybe is applicable regarding neighborhood compatibility. It feels too big for that street. And very importantly, at the second HLC hearing, quote, we may not have had an opportunity to analyze closely the project that came before us originally from a standpoint of its scale, end quote. Furthermore, the lack of story poles defining the entire structure deprived all, including the commission, of a major means of assessing its true enormity. Yet, during commentary at the end of the second HLC meeting, it was further stated that, quote, I think it's our general rule of consistently narrowing down to the applicant in fairness, as opposed to going back and reversing some of our previous discussions and decisions unless there's a good reason, real good reason to do so. Well, we believe we've presented real good reasons to revisit decisions made at the first HLC hearing, including allowing new construction of a now 6,362 square foot structure on a street where the average square footage is 2,551. Allowing a zero setback modification between 223 and 25, denying us appropriate maintenance of the mountainside of our property, which we haven't had access to for 17 years due to the immediately adjacent property, also creating security concerns and noise between properties. Diminished property values, the concerns we previously presented by our neighbors on Equestrian and Victoria Streets, street view video we presented to the Planning Commission challenging the proposed transitional nature of the building, and examination of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code referring to purposes and conditions for granting modifications. Lastly, both the staff hearing officer and Planning Commission partially based their decisions to deny appeal on previously made decisions by the HLC. And if HLC decisions made very early in the approval process shouldn't be revisited in fairness to the applicant, where do the appellants and the neighbors stand? And we ask, what is the point of the appeal process? We thank the Commission for its time and consideration, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, up next we'll have Jane Westerman, and then on deck we'll have Randy Meehan. Okay, so on deck, we'll have Terry Bartlett.
I'm the only one who is not in the workforce.
Jane Westerman, did you want to? Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so we'll have Terry Bartlett up to the podium then.
Sorry, I was slightly confused.
Yeah, no problem.
Terry Bartlett. I'm with the law firm of Reeds, Fox and Bartlett.
Oh, is the mic on? Let's see.
Now it is.
Okay, perfect, great, thank you.
Sorry. My name is Terry Bartlett. I'm with the law firm of Reeds, Fox and Bartlett, and we represent Anchor Real Estate Development, LLC, the owner of the property, I believe it's to the west. It's 1223 Garden Street. It was referred to as a 60s apartment building. Our concern, and I was encouraged by planning staff to come in today and raise it here, is what's going to happen during the demolition and the construction. Dust, debris, noise, hours, things of that nature. I tried to find out if something had been raised about that previously and hit a dead end. Our parking lot abuts the new development, and we're very concerned about our tenants not having the ability to enter and exit the parking lot, and also the windows that face the back or the west side of the building, people being impacted by noise and things of that nature. We're not here to oppose the project, we're just here to make sure that we aren't over impacted during the course of the demo and construction, which will be significant. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
At this time, I don't have any further speaker slips, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. I'm not seeing any hands raised, but we did receive written correspondence from Jane and Rick Westerman and Mark Kenneth Flores that was distributed to the commission prior to the meeting. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Chair Grumbine.
All right, thank you. All right, to the commission for questions. Any questions on this item? I have a question. Can you show us where the 1223 Garden Street 60s apartment is via,
So it's here.
okay, and then is the parking lot to the left there?
We have an aerial you can zoom in on right there.
Yeah. Okay,
It's a backup. It's a backup for their 60s parking underneath there.
gotcha. Yeah, okay, that'd be good, to get some site photos of it too.
And that 24-foot height is the height of the existing pink building?
Yeah.
There we go, okay. Okay. So then, I guess, to the applicant, was there any thought on, during construction, any thought on noise or other controls?
Yeah, they're it's always a problem in architecture and construction. We're not allowed to go on their property or on 223's property, so these are always a bit of a pain in the butt. And but we build up a fence up and work our way inwards on that. So we're going to do it per code. And as far as the hours go, there's the city hours to do construction. Sometimes people have asked for different hours or shorter hours, which makes the project go longer. I suppose the owner would talk to neighbors about that.
Okay. All right. Okay, other questions? Any other questions? Ms. Shirley?
Question for staff. I don't know if you've got the answer to this, and it's out of our purview, but I'm curious anyway. What is the, if you know, the FAR of 233.
Through the chair, Commissioner Uli, because this isn't just a single unit residence, I don't have that exact number of what that would be. As you know, we would look at that based on the lot size and just the size of the residence itself. The ADU would be included within that number because it's an accessory residential unit, but it wouldn't include the office. I don't have that number available.
Do we have FARs for any of the residences along Equestrian?
The applicant does have not the FARs, I believe, but the neighborhood context study that provides the square footage of different residences. That was included in the set and the prior sets reviewed by the HLC.
Thanks.
So, yeah, thank you, Chair Grumbine. So that was the same question I had, was, so we don't know, we don't have a FAR for the proposed project? No?
Is it on there? Do we have that?
Through the chair to Commissioner, so FARs are typically used for single-family residential projects, not for non-residential buildings or mixed-use buildings. We also don't necessarily apply them for AUD. Those are just looked at by density. So.
Okay. And then another question is, as you were going through these, the many changes that you did to push the tower back and the various things you did, were you in discussion with the neighbors and showing them that and getting their feedback and how they felt about that?
Yes, after the last meeting, whatever number 2 was, we went over there, back with the transit. I'm not sure when we took the transit over and are trying to, standing on their deck. And that's when we decided to move that back. And based on, I think actually it was one of your comments was one of them, and their comments was still, they liked the changes, but they still wanted us to go farther. So we did that, we showed them, they did say they liked it and were happy we'd made all these changes for them. So that's why we're confused. We did exactly what everybody wanted, and then it gets pushed back again. Or there's still complaints about it. So that's really what is bothering us at the moment, and my client especially. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we did that for them. It was not easy. It took a lot of time. And my clients didn't, Jeff, is this going to work for an entry? Mm-hmm. And I assure them that it will.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And thank you for doing that.
All right, other questions? And related to that, how far was it moved back?
10 feet 6 more. So we're at 29 feet now. The other portion is at 35 feet. Yeah.
All right.
Just a question about the neighborhood context study that was included as part of this. And I'm curious about 212, 214, and 218 Equestrian, which on that context study are marked as apartment buildings. Are those apartments or single-family homes, or what's the... And also, on the aerial view, it shows parking spaces behind. Is that parking area, who does that parking area belong to?
Find those buildings. Are those the Barry Burkus buildings there?
Yes.
Yeah. I look at this, there were some complaints by what we put on here called apartments or houses. We got the information right off the city's website.
Okay.
We didn't knock on every door. We looked, we went to the city website. We put on what the city said. So if there was an error, it's still a building that size, whether more people are living in it or one, I'm not sure. Still didn't knock. This parking is, I believe, from the Anapamu building.
Okay.
Yeah. And that it's come up many times that we were falsifying records. We went right to the website and walked the street very carefully. And some of them, we just didn't knock in and ask how many people are living here. Well, all of them, we didn't ask anybody that.
All right, other questions? All right, well, we'll roll into comments. Who wants to start?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Butler.
So I appreciate the movement towards simplifying, reduction of colors, the effort made to make the building a little more simple, I think. I think that looks like good progress in particular. So I would commend you for that particular part of the rework and the redesign.
Thought you were gonna take longer.
You gonna go get coffee or what?
I had to see all the sides of the model.
I could ramble on if you want.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Vice Chair House.
Well, I, as I'm sure everybody else, has read through all the neighbors' comments, and I'm sorry, I just do not share their concerns. And I think that it's an odd neighborhood. There are narrow, skinny lots, and this is a much bigger lot. So, you know, in terms of the appearance of density, yes, it may be a 6,000 some square foot property, but it's meets the zoning ordinance. I think there's good justification for the building being right up against the neighbor's bare wall. I appreciate all the efforts at moving the tower back. So I just have no objection to it, and I am ready to vote to approve it.
All right. Others?
Yeah.
Commissioner Lenvick?
I concur with what Mr. Howes has said. I think that the project that we saw, it may have been concept one, has responded to our criticisms and has become a simpler and more compatible project in that neighborhood. We probably made comments regarding whether or not this was good or pure EPV Mediterranean architecture, and you know, we could debate that. I think that it is has all the parts that are important, and they may have treated a window opening a little differently than we would find in a real traditional building. But we're also not on State Street. We're not on the major thoroughfares in Santa Barbara, and the quirkiness of the architecture is, I think, very interesting and acceptable. I would almost say I'm enthused about seeing this building completed, because I think it's going to have a lot of positive comments from the community when it's completed. We all look at new construction and we're worried about it and we complain about it, and but when it's done, hopefully our job being, you know, reviewing architecture and projects in EPV, we can see into some of these things. It's unfortunate we don't have a model every time, because I think if the neighbors got down and looked at that building, they're going to see a two-story building from the street. You know, you probably will see more of this building from, what's the street behind?
Victoria.
Anapamu? Victoria. You probably see more of this building from Victoria Street than you do from, I mean, the height of the building, than you do from Equestrian. And I'm quite happy with what we see here, and certainly find it to be acceptable. Yes, construction is
Noisy and dusty.
Noisy and dusty, and it's, I've lived through it in my neighborhood. Others lived through it when your houses were built, and we simply, that's part of change. It's part of the growth of the city, and we live through it and have a way to accept it and look forward to when it's done. And I think this is going to be a good project, and I will support it.
All right. Commissioner Uli, did you want to?
No.
No? Okay, Commissioner Ensberg?
Okay. Thank you for your work and for all the efforts that you've made. Really appreciate it. I really appreciate the simplifications. I think you've gone a long way with that, and I think it really helps it to we have another important architect on this street, right? 5 houses by Barry Burkus. So, how do these all live together? So I appreciate the simplification. The views are not protected, and you have gone to great effort to move that tower back and to provide that view. So I really appreciate that, and I would hope that the neighbors would as well. So my question is, how do we all get along? And I feel like you have, I'm not sure at this point, what would it take? You've done, I think, a yeoman's job to try to address the neighbor. So I would support the project, definitely. I think you have done everything possible to do that, and you have simplified it and done a really good job of that. So I would hope that the neighbor can understand the great work that you've done and how difficult it is to do all of this work. It takes time, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of financial. So that's what I would hope. We want everyone to get along. We want peace. So I will support the project, and I appreciate the work that you have done, and I don't know what else to say. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner McClure?
Nothing.
Okay.
I have
All right, Commissioner Doran?
I'm supportive of the project. I find it, what weighed heavily on me was the neighborhood. The height, mass, and bulk of this project in a residential neighborhood like San Roque or Samarkand would be inappropriate, but that's not this neighborhood. And I find it particularly where it is on Equestrian as part of the opposite, the large villa of Santa Barbara. I find this to be a transitional building in terms of the streetscape. I find the model, the three-dimensional model, very persuasive in understanding that how it will most likely read at street level. And while I understand the neighbors' lament over views, the views are not protected. And this is the kind of issue that will keep coming back to us as Santa Barbara builds taller and denser and bigger buildings. But I cannot come up with a reason to not support this project. And in fact, I appreciate the efforts made on it, so I'm supportive of it.
Okay. All right, I'll throw in my 2 cents. I agree with what all the other commissioners have said. I think the model is extremely helpful, and that's your color study too, right? You toned it way down?
That's it, yeah.
So approved as built in the model.
Add water.
No, but I appreciate both all the efforts that's gone into listening to our comments and working with those and dialing down the color and pulling the massing back and simplification. I think those have all been very successful, and we appreciate your response to those. I also think with this last move, I think you've done a wonderful job of working with the neighbors when you really didn't have to. You could have built it all the way out, and if the owner had just said this is what is allowed by zoning, then they would have much, much less view. And we can't stop it. It's not our job to actually stop that. So we do appreciate it, especially when people do work with the neighbors and actually try to accommodate at least some of what their desires are when they don't have to. So I appreciate that as well for the owners to spend the extra money and time to accommodate those things and allow their neighbors to enjoy their property even more than they would have had the right to had it been built out fully. And this is also one of those things where we run into this a lot, and sometimes there's an empty lot in a big building with lots of balconies that overlook it and have a fantastic view, and what everyone doesn't realize is that empty lot is going to be a full building probably one day and block all those views. So in this case, I think you worked very delicately with the site, and I appreciate that. And I don't have anything else to add. It seems like all the other aspects have been answered. and this is for project design approval and final approval.
I had a short comment that might help the committee understand, the commission understand this. It'll be short.
Okay, we normally don't, but this is, if you can keep it to 30 seconds, I'll allow it, and then we'll go from there.
I think there's a misunderstanding that we don't appreciate this. We appreciate Jeff's work. We didn't know that he was in France when he moved the stairway back, and we didn't know that. But we were in the process of coming to an agreement about this. Then all of a sudden, more neighbors were coming out of the woodwork that were objecting to the size. Our main goal was the view, which the HLC cannot address, and we understand that. And we were appreciative of Jeff's work. But now we were in the situation of not wanting to tell the neighbors, yeah, this is going to affect you. These are your comments about size, bulk, and scale. But for us, the view's the most important thing, and we can't say, screw you. This is a neighborhood of people. We know each other. We like each other. We socialize with each other. We look after each other's homes. We drive each other to the airport. And the thing is, the ones that we were so close, the only thing we wanted was an agreement between 223 and 225 to not obstruct each other's view. And the owners could not come to grips with a recorded agreement. And looking at the herb garden, that would be fine. But an herb garden can become a 10-foot rosemary hedge. We would have been perfectly satisfied. The neighbors wouldn't.
Okay, yeah, so thank you for that additional
Yeah,
information.
we're not monsters. We appreciated Jeff's work.
No,
and we were very close.
Okay.
And
we always appreciate neighbors trying to work things out, because at the end of the day, you're also neighbors in the end. So we appreciate that, and all the work that anyone who is being part of this, trying to make things work out, is very appreciated. So back to the commission. So it's sounding like everyone's is being supportive of it. And unless there's any other discussion, does someone want?
So
I'll make
through the chair, if you're going to make a motion to approve, which is what's being requested by the applicant, if we can actually go to the findings, please. So in the motion for the project, these are the required findings for approval. And staff is requesting that you specifically go through each finding and specifically state how it meets that finding for this particular site and neighborhood in terms of, for example, size, bulk, and scale, why it does, in terms of providing appropriate open space and landscaping, why it does, for example, and include that in your motion. Thank you.
All right.
I'll move to approve the project, and when there's a second, I'll make the findings.
Second.
My motion for approval is that the project is consistent with the EPV guidelines as they are appropriate to the location of this building. That it is compatible with the architectural character of the neighborhood and the city, and it's.
Do you want to comment a little bit on that in terms of being part of the Spanish colonial revival tradition, or something additional?
It's compatible with the architectural character of the city and neighborhood. We're in the EPV. And it is consistent with that. It is in a neighborhood which has architecture which is slightly whimsical. And this is consistent with that. Its mass, bulk, and scale is appropriate to the neighborhood and appropriate to what the city is looking at in the future from the standpoint of residential development in the downtown. Number 4.
And actually on that, can you also maybe talk about some of the aspects of it, of like stepping back the third story and things like that, that we have commented on?
I was going to add also, thank you, if I could, to help you, that in this specific location, at that end of the block and across from the Villa Santa Barbara, and being so close to, the downtown.
Yes.
I mean, okay.
Well, yes, it's appropriate to the area along with other buildings and is a transition from those other buildings. And it is appropriate in that we are seeing housing in the downtown area being much larger and denser. And this is consistent, or not inconsistent, with what we are seeing happening in the downtown area right now. Number 4. I don't know what adjacent landmarks this is viewed from. So I would say that it is sensitive to adjacent landmarks and historic resources in the area. Public views of the oceans are not interfered with, and public views of the ocean are not interfered with this building, and public views of the mountains from a distance are not interfered with. The use of open space and landscaping is appropriate to the residential use, and we recognize that the building is set back from the street, consistent with other buildings in the neighborhood.
Good job.
Okay.
Is there more?
And the seconder agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess that's all I have to do.
Yep. So, all right, so we have a motion and a second. Under discussion, any discussion?
Is that motion for project?
It's for project approval and final approval.
Yeah, and the seconder,
Can-
okay with it?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we also say that we appreciate the efforts of the applicant to address the neighbors' concerns?
I think that's in the comments, but I don't know if it should be in the motion.
Right. Yeah,
Not appropriate to be in a motion.
Through the chair, I think, yeah, if the motion maker and seconder would like to accept that, that comment from Commissioner Ensberg, that would be appropriate. And also, at least 1 or 2 commissioners commented on the applicant's preparation of a 3D model. If you want to include any information about that in your motion, that's up to the motion maker. Thank you.
Well, yes, the motion, we want to thank the architect for his work and his efforts in providing good information to the neighbors and regarding his project, and modifying his designs to attempt to satisfy the concerns of the neighbors immediately to the west. What else did you suggest? The model. And we appreciate the fact that a large-scale model was provided to us, which gave us a very clear understanding of the heights of the building at the street and how the heights are set back and probably not visible from a majority of people on the street.
all right, and the seconder of the motion?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Do we want to add a cookie recipe in here too?
Actually,
It's getting
Well,
voluminous.
I'd like to thank the owner. I'd like to thank Jeff Shelton's owner for being persistent in seeing this project to this point, we could, if he'd walked away from this and Jeff Shelton had walked away, we could have seen a much different project that we might not have been anywhere near as happy with.
But we're not putting that part in there.
Okay. We don't
Okay,
Call for the question.
all right. Well, we have a motion and a second, and any other discussion?
Nope.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner Dordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindvik,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Oh,
Thank
congratulations.
you, I'm honored, thank you.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
and this.
And we want to thank the neighbors.
And
I mean,
hold
you were
Hold on.
diligent and you were persistent and.
Yeah, hold on one
and you-
second,
you-
hold on one
You
second.
kept looking for the best.
Commissioner
And
Lenvick.
We couldn't satisfy you, unfortunately.
Okay, Commissioner Lenvick,
Yes.
hold
Okay.
Commissioner
hold on
Lenvick.
for a second. Hold on, just one second. I'm gonna,
Oh,
okay, hold on.
the appeal comment.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Gotta make the appeal comment first, and then we could have other. Okay, so this action is appealable to city council within 10 days. All right, go ahead, Commissioner Lenvick. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Who makes your models
All right.
We do.
All right. Any other?
I can tell.
Any other discussion? Doesn't look like it. All right. This meeting is adjourned.